If you like pancakes, then this is the day for you. We're riding over one, more or less. All right, there's a few rises and falls. And in fact, there's some real kickers towards the end today that are going to scare the pants off the fast men. In fact, it neutralised them last time we were here in 2017. Those ramps can be an amazing test. So if you can get up that sort of thing, like Mads Pedersen, like Pascal Ackermann, as he showed the other day, and maybe Brian Coquard, you could have some fun. The question is, will they be allowed to? Sprinters teams at the moment are doing a little bit of control because there's two men up the road. They've been up the road practically from the beginning of the day, so it feels a bit like an extension of a rest day for the GC men. As far as the sprinters are concerned, however, well, I think they'll be a bit nervous. They're certainly bidding for it. This is Cofidis that are moderating the gap to that break at the moment. They've got some help. Sprinters teams want to try and make it their own. Question is, will they? Well, you have to stay with us to find out. (116.6 kilometres) is a long way from home. Sean, this looks like perhaps one of the training rides that they did yesterday.
Yes, well, it's going to be a long day, and yeah, again, the breakaway, we can see, they just rode off the front with ease compared to what we've been having in the days up to the rest day yesterday. All over the weekend, it was a huge battle to get into the breakaway because of the possibility of going all the way to the finish, and we see that's what happened. Out of the breakaway, the stage was won by the riders who had the most energy left in the end of the day. Today, very few takers, and only the teams here, the wildcard teams who want to just get a bit of exposure and get up the road. And we can see 116 kilometres to go. It's going to be a long day, and it's going to be one of these days, a transition day once again. We haven't had many of them in this Vuelta, luckily enough, but today was always going to be a stage that looked like that, and that's what we're getting here. And we can see Luis Angel Mate. He's out in front, of course. Every kilometre you talked about, Carlton, that he rides in the breakaway. He's going to plant a 3 here in Andalusia, and it's going to be matched by his team and the organisers as well. So it equals 3 trees for every kilometre he gets out in the break, and it looks like he's going to have a lot of 3s at the end of the day, of today's stage. But he needs them because he hasn't been in this break a lot. Remember 3, 4, 5 years ago, he was a rider that was in the break so many days. He could have planted a forest back then. But now, I think if you have a very big back garden, if you have a bit of land, a finca, as they call it here in Spain, he can put them in that because he's not going to have many kilometres in the breakaway, unfortunately, this time round. And he's a rider who's been around a long time. With Cofidis, he had some great years there in breakaways, but he's coming also to the end of his time here. And the breakaways were so difficult to get into. He just struggled to get into the days when, there was a big battle to make them.
Well, we'll see if he gets beyond creating an arboretum in his garden. He's done that so far. I'm not quite sure how many kilometres he's already managed, but I think, excuse me, I don't know why I went high pitch there. It's clearly the excitement of the day. I think he's done about, he's getting on for 75 kilometres. So by my rudimentary maths, he's on 225 trees.
Well, he has been in the breakaway on one occasion already, so
oh, yeah.
He has a few more there. But
yeah, it wasn't for long though. He only got 6 trees that day.
Yes. Carlton, that's cruel.
This is going to be a running theme. Let's have some Vuelta stories, shall we?
Thanks, Mauro. Grazie. La moto. Ich troll la moto. Sei fuori di testa?
Welcome to the land of pancakes. It's very flat today. It is not very flat at the end. Well, it's a bit of a filled pancake, let's put it that way. It's slightly lumpy towards the end, but it's going to feel like an alpine test for the quick men by the time we get there. Some mild echelons being displayed as we make our way ever further north. Today we've had a sou'westerly, but it's if a sou'wester is a garment worn for the storms that come from that direction, then I can tell you we're not kicking up one today. Not yet, anyway. You never know. Two men in the break, and it's kind of usual suspects, as you might say. Taking the Okamika, Ander Okamika is up the road, and he is with Luis Angel Mate, a man who, as you know, has pledged a tree for every kilometre that he is in the break. You probably hear a lot about this today. Because it's a pledge that's matched by his local authority and indeed the Ministry of the Environment. So that means for every kilometre, 3 trees are going to get planted. And at the moment, what's he been up the road for? I think he went in the first about 20 metres, to be honest. So he's been up there for what, 75. So that's about 225 trees have been planted so far in the name of Luis Angel Mate, or will be. He was in the break the other day, which Sean has pointed out, which garnered, he wasn't up there for long, so that kind of did his garden. At the moment, he's he planted about the same amount of trees you can see on screen at the moment. But he's hoping to build a rainforest. For that, he's going to have to be out there for quite some time. And it looks like he might be given that time, because everybody else, quite frankly, is tucking in. This is a day, almost an extension of the rest day, Sean, and you can't blame him. It's been a tough race.
Yes, well, of course, when we get a stage like we have today, the riders are going to take advantage of that and use it as you know, an extended, I suppose, rest day. And yeah, it's not surprised that they're taking this, because the riders who are wanting to get something out of this race, you know, the punchers or the rollers, it's always a difficult one, you know, to get the guys to get into the breakaway, because they know, and the teams know as well, this is really just a waste of energy if you go out in front. And it's also controlled very much in the earlier part of the stage. We've seen it on some of the other days when it was a flat day. There was very little people riders wanting to get into the breakaway, and it was controlled as well by the sprinters teams, of course, at the start. You know, they just have a look at the front of the peloton, and today was a day where they had very little work to do. The break was, you know, just allowed to get away. The 2 men we have up the road, they were allowed off the front, and it's not surprising with the stage we have. And yeah, it's going to be one of those days where the riders will, you know, be happy with it, and especially the GC men with the days we have to come. We have 4 very difficult days, not big mountains on some of the days, but again, complicated, tricky days in biking terms. And you know, the GC men and their teams will be happy with today's stage as, you know, part really of another rest day for them.
It was a characteristic of La Vuelta in days gone by that we would have transition days over 300 kilometres in length. And honestly, sometimes it wasn't even as lively as this. It was a way of getting around, of course, and just completing the course. This year, big sections of Spain have actually been missed off. Much, indeed, of the east of the country, to be fair. But it's been a fantastic race so far. And, of course, with the mountains, back-to-back mountains, which characterise the weekend, you can forgive the riders for quite frankly, just getting themselves ready, girding themselves almost for what is still to come. And there's plenty, of course, with Ten Tuida tomorrow, which is a real breakaway day, I think it's fair to say, with the Category 2 test towards the end. In fact, this race has been characterised by its uphill finishes. And despite what you might think, we've got one of those today as well, Sean. It's a hellish finale if you're a quick man.
Yes, it is. For the real quick men, it's going to be a difficult one to stay up here and be in the position where you need to be for the sprint. It's really for the more the punchers or the men who can manage this uphill finish. Matt Pedersen, we've seen him already. He's won a stage uphill finish, and when those guys are in real good shape, they're so difficult to beat. And today is going to be an interesting one, because again we have a very difficult run in, and we have that climb before the run to the finish as well, which is an extra kick there. And if some teams really want to push on there, well, that's where the sprinters will start suffering already before they even get a sniff at the finish. So it could be a real difficult one for the very fast men. And then we did see the last time Trentin winning here, the GC men, there was a lot of them up in the top 10, so that tells it is a real tester, and that this one is a bit more difficult again.
Rise with Grand Tour stage wins and World Cup cyclocross wins. And there they are. Last bumps, Zdenek Zibar, Julian Alaphilippe, of course, Van Aert, Van der Poel, you know about those two. Tönnissen, Pidcock, and of course now Tiemann Arensman. And what a fantastic result that was for him after being called out of a break, much to his own chagrin, as our French friends would say. But was allowed his head, and indeed used it brilliantly in the run-up to Sierra Nevada. Taking a stage win for DSM, and the emotions poured out of the young German. And quite rightly too, it was a hell of an achievement. We'll have more on the Castilla here in a short while. This is the Castilla de Mechanilla, but this is Mr. Arensman.
Tiemann, good morning. Have you realized what you've done 2 days ago?
Yeah, I think so. Winning a Grand Tour, my first Grand Tour stage victory, and also then the Queen stage. Yeah, I think that's pretty special. But yeah, now it's just back to reality again, and it's another week of hard racing.
You are now in the top 10 of the GC. What is the goal? To stay in it, or to take some risk and to go for a second victory?
Yeah, I don't know. We just have to see it day by day. Like I just want to see how my body reacts in the third week, and then we'll see what rolls out.
What about your future? You mentioned that you wanted to do some cyclocross with Ineos, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm leaving DSM, so it depends on my new team what they want me to do. Like, I'm happy to do some cyclocross, but if they say like it's better to train on the road, then I also understand that. Thank you.
There's a man who toes the PR line brilliantly. When he was called out of the break, Sean, he was clearly very, very upset and annoyed about it, and basically said it was a team decision, and I respect the team decision. And they said, come on, tell us more. Are you annoyed by it? And he said, it was a team decision, I respect the team decision. And we asked him again, and he said exactly the same thing. He knows which side of his bread is buttered, Sean, quite clearly. He's going to go far.
Yes, well, what a ride he did on Sunday, being out there on the break, and with that finish being such a difficult one, altitude as well, the fatigue after being the breakaway, first of all, a long climb of that 20 kilometres plus, and it looked like when you got to that final, maybe 8 kilometres ago, I was forecasting that it could be, or it would be maybe more so, from the favourites group that would come up from behind and take the stage. But he held on, magnificently. He was super strong, and yeah, won comfortably in the end, and held off by what, a minute and 20 something seconds. And you could see at the finish how deep he had went, he's a rider that he's been talked a lot about, and I think he made another step forward big time on Sunday, the way he won that stage and the way he held on. out on his own there on the end and catching up with Soler, of course, who was out for much longer, maybe a bit too early. He really paid the price. And yeah, he's moving teams, of course. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see will he do some cyclocross. But of course, what we see there about the cyclocross winners in the past is also it's under 19, under 23, as well as, of course, World Cup in cyclocross, and we see the names. But Arnsman was a surprise to me. There's a lot of them in there. We know immediately they were very good cyclocrossers. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he'll do some cyclocross during the winter time.
Or be allowed to, as he says. ...107 kilometres to go. Just no wind at all. We were kind of hoping that on the wide open plains it may well be a factor today, and it occasionally picks up in the afternoon. But what are we heading for now? About quarter past, just heading to the quarter past the hour of 3 in the afternoon. Heat again a factor today. You'll see some of the ice packs coming out, crushed ice that the riders use to struggle or battle against the heat. Around about 32 Celsius, picking up to as a maximum today. And in fact, we're at the hottest part of the day now, just before it begins to ebb a little bit. Started off at 26 Celsius today. To be honest, Sean, heat has not been a defining factor of the race. I think it was a bit of a shock to them when we first came to Spain. 33 and 34 Celsius after the 23 and 24 Celsius of our start. In and around Utrecht and Breda, but the body adapts rather quickly, and I think after the second of our 3 rest days in the middle of the race, I think everyone was just about, well, they kind of got themselves helping their bodies and started to regulate it, and that was no wider display of that than Jay Vine, who got up for 4th place on stage 15 that Arensman won. That was a surprise to many because he looked to be struggling in the heat, and he got up there, didn't he?
Yes, but I think the thing we were most concerned about when we came from the Netherlands back to mainland Spain, Basqueland, it was here quite warm, much warmer than we had been getting up in the first number of days of racing. So that was a little bit of, an adjustment time, and I was concerned when we went, down to Alicante after being a number of days in the north of Spain that it would get very warm, but it wasn't the case, and it never got to that really, furnace conditions that you can get down in this area, which we're still in at the moment. So it has been a race where heat-wise, when you look back at past years in the Vuelta, it has been, much, much warmer for many days. So they have come through very well this time around. It hasn't been that scorching conditions that you can get in the Vuelta.
Look at that terracotta-coloured land there. If it contains clay, it literally cooks in the sun over the years, and you get this orange complexion to it. So it very much displays the heat to you. You'll know if you fly over to the Algarve in Portugal or down to the south coast of Spain. It's a very familiar kind of colour, that terracotta. Well, raining, I guess, down blows is what Jumbo-Visma will be hoping to do when we start to climb seriously on stages 18 and particularly 20 during this race. But 3 days of climbing still to come. In the meantime, we're kind of transitioning today, but it will be a kicker at the end. 105 kilometres to go. And at this pace, it's going to take quite some time. We are slower than the slowest predicted pace by a couple of kilometres per hour. Nothing serious, and it will pick up a little bit later on, but we're expecting a finish time, UK-wise, probably getting on towards, I don't know, 5 o'clock marker, that kind of thing. There's a display at 3 minutes and 25. I miss the chalkboard, Sean. They've gone whiteboard. It's not the same.
Sorry, it ain't the same, but it still gives the riders the information they need. So I don't think the riders are going to be concerned. The only concern is this advantage again. It's not allowed to go out to be a big 1-2 man breakaway. if you go back through the history of cycling and go back 20 years ago, and you get a breakaway, like this in a 3-week tour, you know, it could be get 10, 12 minutes, and then they would try and reel them in at a very fast pace in that final 60 kilometres, 70 kilometres. Now it's totally changed the strategy of the teams. They just allowed the breakaway, a very slim advantage, and depending on the number of riders in the breakaway, if it's, you know, 6, 8 riders, then it just gets slimmer and slimmer the more riders in the breakaway. And unfortunately here again, you know, that's what they're doing here, not allowing any hope to the breakaway. And it's going to be one of these long days where, you know, it's controlled here by, we can see Cofidis, we can see Trek Segafredo are contributing here. Movistar, they're just up in the front for safety reasons. We can see, you know, the third man back to the 4th, 5th man there. You know, they're just keeping in a safe position. And you know, this is going to be one of those days where it's going to be a long drawn out affair, but it will be hectic in the end. And unfortunately for the sprinters that are still in here, again, the organisers haven't made it easy for them, because with this real difficult finish for the real fast men, it's going to be a very difficult one again. And you know, we can see Tim Leah there on the rear end of affairs with the Belgium champion jersey, and a number of other riders as well. You know, they are going to be very disappointed with this race. It's been a lean one for the sprinters, the opportunities. You know, the days that we have like today, they just make it that little bit too difficult in the end for the very fast men. And yeah, I think it's going to be the same situation today as it was a number of days when we see Pedersen winning that stage spectacularly.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's a kind of a select group that would have had to take on the burden of chasing today. So not wanting to have the misfortune of having to impose themselves late on and maybe neutralising their chances. You're getting those teams that really have an interest in a ramp finish today, like Cofidis for Brian Kokar, like, of course, Trek Segafredo for Mads Pedersen. And I suspect Bora Hansgrohe, although I haven't seen them, so they're playing quite clever at the moment. Don't think it's a Caden Groves kind of day, although in the heat, of course, that we had once we got down towards Alicante and the like, our run to Cabo de Gata, that was our hottest day of this race, 37 Celsius. Caden Groves beating Danny Van Poppel that day. Tim Merlier was a third, but Tim Merlier will not like our finale, so not quite sure whether Alpecin de Koenig will be doing too much work. It's Carlos Rodriguez. We had a little feature upon him earlier on today, and for many years now we've been saying that France is producing the youngsters. Italy is even dragging a few young legs up into the top draw. And now Spain, all of a sudden, Sean, we have an abundance of riches here, almost spoilt for choice, I think. When we look down the top 10, we see all those Spanish names with a little star next to their name as well, indicating that they are youngsters and certainly one to regard for the future. Ayuso and Rodriguez, superstars, not even in the making, Sean, here and now. It's great.
Yes, it is, and yeah, it's an interesting one. You know, these young riders, as we talked about, Rodriguez and Ayuso, how they would ride as we go into the final week of the race. And Sunday we did see some little bit of cracks from Carlos Rodriguez, the Ineos rider, because he was in 4th place. He slipped down one. He was overtaken by Ayuso, who finished spectacularly well on the climb to Sierra Nevada, because he was, you know, in difficulty very early. And I think the crash we see there before we came to that really difficult section at the start, it really split the peloton, and there were some of the riders, I think, you know, got a little bit out of position because of that crash. And but Carlos Rodriguez, he was at 3:46 in 4th, and he slipped down to 5:16, so he lost a bit of time there, but again, nothing major. When you consider, you know, the Queen stage on Sunday, he's still very much in the fight for the podium, in 5th place at the moment at that 5:16. And Juan Ayuso, who is at 4:49, they're all hoping that they can get onto the podium and, you know, just make a big impression in this Vuelta. And they're doing that already, but the podium is the thing. When you're so close, if you're in that 4th, 5th position, and you know it's not a huge gap to get onto the podium, well then you're always hoping that you can finish really well in the final number of days of this one. So it's going to be interesting for the two Spanish young, big hopes for the future.
It's interesting here watching. They're all in 2x2, Sean. They're shooting the breeze. It's a day when you're able to do so. It looks like pressure off, at least for the time being. There's Tim Melier, the Belgian champion, just going through your picture at the moment. A couple of riders shadowing him. Vermeersch and Stannard will be hoping to do something potentially a little bit later on. And what about Alejandro Valverde? I don't know, he's running out of opportunities, Sean, to have a dig, and this would have been a stage absolutely with his name written all over it in the past. Do you think he's going to dig in today for a bit of glory? They're certainly up towards the 4.
Well, I think you'll have to dig in to stay up there, but I think to get anything out of the stage, it's really going to be difficult for him. We've seen him already, you know, in the ones where it has been these uphill finishes. He's not as explosive as he was a number of years ago. And yeah, when you look at the riders that are here, I think to get anything major, meaning win the stage, because that's all that counts to Valverde. Finishing, you know, 3rd or 4th on the stage, that's, you know, no good to him. So I think it's just for Movistar, just playing safe here, keeping to the front end of the race.
He might have a dig tomorrow in Tedudia. Right, I'm just going to put myself on the verbal starting blocks here, because as rapid as the machine gun is the speaking pace of Joaquim Rodriguez, and we're about to hear from him. So I'm going to get myself ready. I suggest you you do too.
5, 4, 3, go, Kurt.
I might as well start early. Because I need an advantage. I should be okay with the questions. It's his answers that are the issue. Wish me luck. Here we go. I'm diving in. Burrito, this morning we have a confrontation in a past generation with the future. Someone new, Alejandro Valverde, is going to close the gap on a young generation. How does that feel? Well, I think Alejandro is most part of a generation, and this is the actual one. I'm happy to see the generation that is coming. And Enric Mas, of course, showed that he is in great shape, and probably more on this Vuelta than before. Moreover, the young riders, Juan Ayuso and Carlos Rodriguez, are already outpacing our generation. Alejandro is still here giving away, and I don't know what that means. And we, this last year of racing, he is the last rider of our generation of the 80s. Our generation is more from the 70s. Oh, I can take it a bit easier. You've been rivals for a while, and in a short time Valverde will be back in the same group of veterans. How does it feel? Well, it feels amazing. You can quit cycling, but keep doing what he's doing as a hobby training, you might say, with your ex-rivals. Yesterday, for example, I trained with Oscar Ferreira. The other day, I trained with Alberto Contador. Now, for sure, I will face Alejandro Valverde in many events, and that will be a beautiful thing. That's one of the beautiful things about cycling. It was still quick, wasn't it? I might have dialed it down about 3% there, but I just about kept up. He's in a happy place, Joaquim Rodriguez. We loved Perito. His legs used to go almost as fast as his tongue does now.
Well, he was, you know, a talented rider. And you know, on this sort of finish today, he would be a one who would love this, because he would, you know, hit from a bit earlier out and try and put, you know, the others under difficulty. And of course as well, in the big mountains, he was, you know, a super talented rider. And yeah, looks like he's riding his bike a lot. Looks still very fit looking.
He does. He was the designer of many tortuous finales, Sean. They used to bring him in and say, right, we want a really, really nasty one. And he would say, my pleasure, because those were the sort of ramps where he used to thrive. Everyone else looked like they were standing still, and he was away.
Yes, well, nothing new. Riders in the professional peloton, if they're in the part of the organisation, Escartin as well, we know he was another rider who liked this difficult stuff, and he's part of the race organisation now and the selection of the routes they pick for the stages and the finishes, of course. And then you go to the director sportifs in the cars. A lot of them, a big percentage of them, past professional riders. And I see back in my time, the riders I was riding with, they were always, well, not always, but a lot of the time they were moaning, and especially the ones who did not like these finishes like today, or the mountain stages when they were really difficult. And then they became director sportifs, and there was no problem at all. So it's nothing new that when you retire out of the peloton, you don't have any problem making the race really difficult, and yeah, you don't think about it when you're not competing anymore.
Yeah, he's still very much attached to the race and racing in general. And he's such a nice guy. Except of course, if you're trying to translate what he's saying, which is a task, I can tell you. Two up front. I kind of feel sorry for them, Sean, because they know they're sacrificial lambs. We haven't seen a whole lot, I must admit, because the composition of the breakaway has been we've had large breaks, one of 32, I think that was on stage 12, huge. Of course, there was 29 up the road the other day when Aronsman won just before the rest day. So they haven't really had the opportunity to have us talk about their teams terribly much as invitees. And even today, with only two up there, we've kind of done it, really. Did I tell you about the trees? Yeah, yes, we have. Don't worry, we're not going to constantly bang on about that. This is the Rio Guadalquivir, Sean. I don't know whether you can go trout tickling down here, but it looks very still.
Yes, it does look still, and everything seems to be still today. The peloton looks to be very still, and that's the area and that's the atmosphere all over today.
Well, we're at the source of the Guadalquivir at the beginning of this day, and now we're close to the mouth of it. Thanks to our producer Pete for that. 96.1 kilometres from home and 3 minutes and 21. Some of you going for a break. Everyone else a bit jealous. And we will see some of you in a short while. Sean, the only thing I haven't seen today, or indeed in this race so far, is vultures. I'm getting nothing from Sean. They do have them round here, I can assure you. What we do have is a very mild variation in terrain until we actually get to the end of today. Plenty of time for them to get themselves a feed in the defined areas, thank heaven for that. Very much part of the protocol of everything these days. And the fans, there seems to be less fines ringing down on riders who donate their bidons to those at the roadside. When they first brought in the protocol, anti-littering protocol, it was really quite tough on some, Sean.
Yes, sorry, Carlton, there I was in my musette seeing what I had for lunch here today. So
I don't blame you, to be honest.
Not anything like I had on Sunday there when I had Dan Lyde's lunch, and it was prawn sandwiches, so that was very nice, because with the stage being going so fast, I was given Dan's lunch. So yeah, not every day you have the luxury of that. No,
I mean, Dan normally has his lunch delivered by the butler, so you know, with a great silver cloche over the top of it. I'm surprised it wasn't lobster thermidor, to be honest, Sean, but a prawn sandwich, that'll do.
Yes, and going back to the fines to the riders on Sunday stage, there was quite a nice few fines giving out. Nibali got a fine for throwing the bottle outside the zone, and also it hopped back onto the road. But how's a rider going to know that when you throw your bidon? Even
well, that was named in the fine.
Yes, that was, yeah. It rebounded back onto the road, onto the chaussee, as they called it, and they gave him 500 Swiss franc and 25 UCI points. And other riders as well. Roglic also got that same fine, also for throwing an object in the out of the zone, they called it. And Krishna Neerman, also from Jumbo, sorry, he was also fined. He's the director sportif, of course, but it was the rider who threw it. They could not identify the rider at 120 kilometre mark. He got the 500 Swiss franc fine, and the team of Albacinda Koenig, at the start they parked outside the zone where the buses should be for the teams, and that was for another 500 Swiss francs. So when you add all up that, it's a nice total for the UCI at the end of the day on Sunday.
Well, you know what? Somebody's got to pay for the Christmas party.
And the prawn sandwiches.
Gosh, 2.5 hours we've been going. Remco Evenepoel managed to sustain the pressure, Sean. Has he done enough to carry this jersey all the way? There's still some climbing days to come. The race is not all over, is it?
No, it's not all over at all. And I think, Evenepoel, he will have confidence from what he did on Sunday. But again, he's going to be concerned about what's coming up in the next number of days. And, if you're a rider, in your first big tour, leading the race for a number of days, it's normal that you're going to be concerned, and the team also with riders less.
It's just eavesdropping, if you will, on some of the conversation. Well, I've been riding for just over 2.5 hours. Here's Primož Roglič, looks completely stress-free at the moment.
And Robbie McGowan's a favourite probably again today.
Darren Limpy. No, I think he's gone. Brian Coquard, if I'm not mistaken.
He'll pick another one or two when he comes on air. He usually do that. He picks, his pick of the day, but then he throws in another two just to be sure.
Well, nobody's going to be sure for him. Meanwhile, UAE Team Emirates, one of the few teams at full strength. Sean, we've lost 42 riders from this race so far. That's a lot, and most of it to COVID.
Yes, a lot to COVID, and we were getting very concerned there at the end of the first week, early last week. The number of riders were going out. Some days we had 5 riders dropping out, and most of them, COVID positives. And Remco Evenepoel also, was quoting there, he said the crowd control wasn't great at the end of the time trial. He said it was a bit crazy with so many people around the finish area. I presume just after the finish line, a bit further on, he was talking about. And we lost a lot of very big names. We lost Simon Yates, Sivakov after the time trial, and Yates, a very strong time trial, and Sivakov the same. And then we lost, of course, Sam Bennett. We lost Kus, that was a bit earlier. Ether Hater we lost out of this race. And when you talk about the riders we've lost, a GC man, it's a very disappointing to see Simon Yates and Sivakov going out, because they looked in very good shape. And I presume that, the rider like Primož Roglič is, looking at that as well. If you had a lot more of those big favourites in, the race might have been more difficult to control for Remco Evenepoel and Quick-Step. That is something that you always look at, and you're looking at what opportunities maybe are missed in this race. The other thing I think is Enric Mas losing so much time in the time trial to Remco Evenepoel. He slipped a long way, and we could see that on Sierra Nevada when he went in the attack. Remco wasn't really concerned because he had a huge buffer to Mas, and he could allow him to ride away. So for Primož Roglič has made the situation more complicated for him to try and put Remco in difficulty over the past weekend.
Yeah, I mean, Movistar team time trial as well. Mas lost about 30 seconds, 29 seconds, I think, to Evenepoel then. So every single element has to be indeed mastered, and it's more difficult, of course, when you're starting to lose teammates. Thankfully for Enric Mas, just the one with Norsgaard absent.
¿Qué tal se está encontrando ya del COVID, del positivo que dio la semana pasada? ¿Habéis notado si ha
we're talking about the COVID positives, Sean, and indeed how it's affected the race so far.
Cuatro test antígenos y dio negativo, y el antígeno de la organización y dio negativo es cuando él sentía el lunes, cuando sentía, digamos, ese malestar, ¿no? Pero el miércoles, el jueves estaba perfecto, incluso el martes estaba ya entrando un poquito y el viernes dio positivo, ¿no? Ahora ha vuelto a dar negativo, no sabemos, no entendemos, no sabría darte una explicación porque no la tengo y incluso los médicos tampoco la tienen. Ayer hablamos con los médicos incluso de carrera y tampoco hay una explicación al COVID el por qué. Pero bueno, el feeling ya habéis visto también en Sierra Nevada que era bueno, él fisiológicamente, el físicamente y a nivel de feeling que él tiene es bueno. Y bueno, la verdad que en ningún momento ha tenido estos días un mal feeling, con lo cual vamos a seguir en esa línea y sobre todo ahora sabiendo que es negativo en PCR, en antígeno, en todo.
Qué bien, buenas noticias. Por último, ¿cuáles son los días claves de esta última semana? Hablando de la general.
Bueno, hay 3 etapas, ¿no? Yo creo que el Piornal no se está valorando mucho esa etapa y es una etapa complicada, es una etapa donde se puede hacer también daño porque es una etapa que se asciende 2 veces, que puede ser, digamos, que tiene una subida como es el Piornal complicada y que se está esperando prácticamente todo el mundo a Madrid, ¿no? Pero bueno, quien quiera moverse tácticamente en el Piornal es una etapa importante.
Muy bien, muchas gracias.
Vale, gracias.
Gracias.
Well, apologies. I'm so late to the translation of that. I didn't receive it, but I can tell you now. Finally got it. He says he doesn't want to be repetitive, but when asked the question, we're starting week 3 in the Vuelta with Ayuso still surprising everybody. What can we expect from João Almeida? He said, well, don't want to keep repeating myself, but I want him to take it day by day and follow the same path, because in the 3rd week, it's important to take one day after the other. Of course, we've seen that. You just have to take it steadily. The question then was, how is one doing after the COVID infection that he suffered in the previous week? He said, well, he's had 4 antigen tests and they were all negative. And also PCR tests was negative. So right last Monday, when he was feeling bad, of course, they were raining tests down upon him. So they didn't really understand why they were not being displayed. There's no explanation. And it seems that COVID doesn't follow the same paths. So physically and mentally, he's absolutely where he needs to be. He's showing some great sensations, as you know. So considering that he had all of those tests that were negative, and then he had a very, very mild positive, I think it's right, Sean, that he is in the race, and there doesn't seem to be much argument about that. He's riding strong and he's not infectious, so there you go.
Yes, well, that is pretty true. You know, this COVID situation, it's difficult to know, you know, where the riders were getting it. Was it because they had spectators around at the finish area? We also heard about, you know, the zone where the team buses are. The journalists, they did put a restriction on that, where in the earlier part of the race it seemed to be more open. So that is, you know, I think a difficult one to know where exactly the riders were getting it. And of course then the testing as well. You know, we hear about, you know, guys are positive COVID, but they can't continue on because they're not infectious to the other riders and personnel in the team. But some riders don't have the facility to be able to do that test, and you know, it's all about budget, I presume. And we heard from some of the teams, notably Kuftis, with Harada going home. He wasn't very happy with the situation. He was sent home, and there's other riders as well, of course. And then Ayuso stayed in the race. So, you know, that is it's another day for a discussion. And but yeah, it's good to see that he's able to continue in the race, and yeah, it's performing very well. But unfortunate for some of the smaller teams, and the riders more so, they are going to be disappointed that, you know, in their situation, you know, they weren't able to do those extra testing, whatever exactly it is, I'm not sure. But, you know, they had to go home, and it's normal that they are very disappointed. But that's, we know COVID the way it's been. In general, it's, you know, it's a complicated one, and it's, yeah, it's difficult to have the exact procedures for everybody here in the peloton during this Vuelta.
Well, the final question there was, what about the key moments of this final week? And of course, that's very much filling the minds of us as well. He actually said, I think there are 3 important stages: the Alto de Biormal, Very, very important. That's Pional. That comes day after tomorrow. That's stage 18. We remind you, the run to Pional, that'll be on Thursday. He said it's a difficult one, and that can certainly take its toll. I think that's going to be very important, actually, because it's 2 Category 1 tests right at the end of the day. Everyone's fearful, Sean, of stage 20, but stage 18, there will be attacks. And that, I guess, these 2 sort of lighter days, at least put some power back in the legs. But we're going to have a hell of a battle there, aren't we? And this man will be involved as well.
Yes, well, I think, we have the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, they are all big days. And, of course, it's not the big stage with the most mountain, high category climbs that can cause the problem. It can be on another day when teams really, put the pressure on and, the racing becomes hectic at the start. And the one to Piomal, we have to climb that one twice, although it's a bit different on both climbs. But again, when you have a climb before the finish, that's where it gets dangerous. If it does, really get aggressive and the teams push on, you could find yourself a bit isolated. And for Evenpool, that can be a little bit of a danger one. When he gets onto the final climb and it's a mountaintop finish, then he's able to defend quite well. So on stage 19 as well, we have a difficult climb at the start, but there are only 2 second category climbs during that day. But a short stage of 138, I think, kilometres it is, that can also be a problem one. So yeah, you can never relax on those stages. And then of course stage 20, that's another monstrous day because we have a lot of very big climbs and another mountaintop finish as we have on stage 18. So yeah, this week coming, it's a complicated week, and anybody, if you were a rider who have won in big tours, if it was Roglic, for example, in the lead here, with the lead that Evenpool has, I don't think he'd be too relaxed either. When you're missing some of your key men in the team, all of that, all those situations you have to take into account, and then the terrain. It's a real nervous time for Evenpool because his first time in this situation, and but he's defending well and looked very, very, very strong on Sunday.
Yeah, interesting though that they said taking a day at a time. When we get to the Pional, we of course take the same peak twice, and tactically that's going to be a bit of a conundrum for everybody. How much to put into the first time of asking? I guess at least they'll have a map of what remains after they've done it once, but it'll be a huge test, I think, Sean. And the first of 3, as you say, back to back to back.
Yes, well, the end of the third week, it can throw up a lot of surprises, and riders, for some reason, they really start to suffer in the final number of days of the third week of racing. So that's always a concern for the riders. And if you're a solid stage race rider, you have been there in the past, you just never know what the body reaction it will be as you go into that final week. And then if you're a young rider like Evenpool, the ones who are up there in the general classification, they are going to be concerned. Ayuso, for example, Rodriguez, all of those guys, it's something new, it's something unknown for them. So for those guys, it's probably a little bit more concerning.
Well, he's coming by some archaeological wonders today, one of which I'm very much looking forward to seeing is the Italica complex. I think you kind of worked out it was probably Roman. Well, it was. And it seems if you wanted to build an amphitheatre, one way of doing it is actually just to dig it. So you kind of go down and you'll see some spectacular, indeed, amphitheatre a little bit later on. And the Moorish influence in these parts, the Real Alcazar as well, looks like something that's, over the water from Morocco, to be honest. Absolutely beautiful. Anyway, we'll get to those a little bit later. The terrain is just starting to roll just a little bit, just to pitch and toss. Later on, it's going to get very, very severe. And I can't wait for that. The way they will ride it at the end of today, Sean, it'll be maximum attack.
Yes, it will. It will be a hectic, running again. And when you get an easy day like this, as you know, the riders back in the peloton are getting the big majority of them. There are going to be some riders with a lot to give in the final for their sprinters, and that always gets hectic then when you have the teams all fighting to be in control, and then you put the GC men in there as well, and a lot of that is going to be a problem one, but it's something that the riders, they've all had before, and you have to get on and try and get this day over safely. A relatively easy day, but again, the final can all go wrong, and that's where you have to be on alert and your full focus and get this day over with. Starting out very nice, going all through the day, 80+% of the stage, no problem at all, but it can all go very wrong in the final 10% of the stage in the run to this finish.
Well, gird yourselves as we come through Alcalá del Rio. You'll be seeing the bridge and the dam. I imagine the dam's probably not got much water in it, to be honest. It's been a very hot year, and indeed the temperatures have scorched the earth, and those are the wildfires that Luis Angel Mate is trying to moderate in terms of their impact by donating trees to his locale. They lost over 100,000 hectares to fire, which is a real shame. But what it does give us today, I guess having an easier day, is a chance to, well, hear from Adam Blythe and his famous paella recipe. He'll be in about 5 kilometres time. I don't think he's rushing. And then later on, of course, we'll be hearing from Dan Lloyd and Robbie McEwen, who'll be joining us. And as this day, it looks like it's paced up just a little bit, Sean. Am I misreading it?
Well, the riders probably have just upped the pace a bit as they're going through this village with a number of spectators, quite a number actually. So just to make it look good here for the spectators, go a bit faster. But we can see when they get out of the countryside, I think it will be knocked back again. And 2:35, 84 kilometres to go. If it starts to come down here, they will definitely knock it off, because they do not want to catch these two riders for a long, long time into this stage.
Gosh, the air is just hanging so still. It's a vertical feather day, this. Well, if you feel like sort of visiting other parts of the GCN Eurosport empire, then feel free to do so, because there's an awful lot going on at the moment. Should we find out what it is? Very different complexion. Rooster Tail's been kicked up off the wheels here. Tour of Britain Stage 3 is live at the moment. And as you can see, the peloton at a gap of 2 minutes and 46. Sean, I think I'd rather be in Spain.
Well, I think everybody would be, not only the riders, but everybody involved in the team. And yeah, unfortunately for the Tour of Britain, a week maybe late, because conditions have really turned bad.
Don't forget tomorrow. It's the Ceratizit Challenge by La Vuelta. It's wonderful, Sean, that so much support is being offered these days to women's cycling, and the racing is amazing.
Yes, and the Tour of France we had this year, the Women Tour of France, it was amazing, and the amount of people turned out and the racing we see there, and it goes on, and now we have this one coming up, and it's great to see.
So that will be at 18:20 CET tomorrow, and don't forget, of course, an hour early in the United Kingdom. Well, I was hoping for some Roman amphitheatre, but all I'm seeing at the moment is a suggestion of golf courses, which Dan Lloyd, his handicap, by the way, in golf is he's rubbish at it. We'll be hearing more from him in a short while. Yes, I haven't played for probably 25 years, but I reckon I can still thrash him. This is the Castillo Alcalá de Guadaria, and it almost looks, dare I say it, like one of the old castles that would appear in Tintin and the like. Absolutely gorgeous. I'd like to tell you more about it, but honestly, I've got so much information on so many chapels. I'll be sitting here scrolling for ages trying to find it, but impressive nonetheless. I'll find it in a moment, and then it'll be too late. Too much dancing around for my liking. This is where we need John Harris-Bass, quite frankly. 2 minutes and 36. Sean, they've rather cruelly cut the gap. I thought they picked it up here.
Yes, it looks like they have picked up a bit, but it's not going to be, I think, any concern that we're going to see the two men being swallowed up in the near number of kilometres. It's going to go on for a long time, and yeah, it's one of these days that is going to be continue on for a long time, until we see some action out of the peloton to prepare the sprint for the fast men at the end of this day.
Well, here we are. This is been a national monument since 2011. This is the Riberas del Guadalete National Monument. Yes, apparently it is one of a large number of parks and riverbanks in Alcala's urban centre. It's the chapel of San Roque. There we are. Roque rolled around the region back in the day, which was quite some time ago. 40 working flour mills, that's one of them, on the riverbanks here. So water mills. How nice is that? Although, of course, problem with water mills is if you have a drought, not much water. How do you mill your grain then? 81.8 kilometres from home, 2.5 minutes is the gap. That's a cruel margin, Sean. Give him some rope, for goodness sake. There's only two of them up the road.
Yes, well, you would expect when you will see the two men in the breakaway where they are at the moment. You can see that straight road out in front of them on our last shot of the two leaders, and yeah, 2 minutes and just over the 30 advantage. It is cruel, and it's going to be like that for many kilometres. And yeah, this is a day that yeah, you could have written this script a long time ago, and unfortunately that is 3-week stage races. They're going to get those days, but you can see here on the back of the peloton the way the riders are, you know, pushing on. When you find yourself back here, well, then you have to make an effort to stay in, but again, it's not anything like full-on racing for the moment, and it's going to be this situation for a long time. And I suppose the GC one is a thing, Carlton, that we looked at and we talked about the main men up at the top of the rankings, but they were quite a bit of movement on Sunday's big stage, because Wilco Kelderman was a man who lost a lot of ground. He slipped from 8th to 14th. Theo Gegenhardt slipping down from 9th to 18th in the GC.
It can happen at any time. Just possibly not today. A lot of you will be very relieved and very welcome. It will be to welcome Adam Blythe to the commentary position. Adam, have they extended the rest day here?
Well, they have, but they haven't at the same time. The speed that they're riding at now, I remember back in 2017 when Trentin won this stage, we were on very, very similar roads, and it was very annoying. You'd be riding along very steadily, you'd be all of a sudden relaxed, and people would let the wheel go. There'd be a sudden gust of wind, and all of a sudden you're having to sprint at the back. So yes, to answer to your question, Carlton, they are having a bit of a rest day, but also it becomes very annoying because your mindset changes to it being as easy as it is right now to all of a sudden you're sprinting for no apparent reason.
But you shouldn't be at the back.
Sean, I don't need judgment, thank you.
2 minutes and 28, though. There is a different complexion to it, and I'm just wondering whether it would suit the likes of Cofidis and Trek, Adam, to make this a little bit more difficult, because they're going to be the ones that thrive towards the end, regardless of how the pace of the day is taken.
Yeah, I don't think they really need to make it more difficult than it needs to be. Those last sort of two climbs, I'm going to call them climbs, there is definitely one before the finish and then coming into the finish. They are tough climbs, so most of the teams, especially the lead-out teams, will just try and keep as little as riders to the front as possible so they can have fresher engines to position their leader coming into that final, because it is going to be, it's quite dangerous. There's a lot of roundabouts. It's in a town, it's in a city, so they need to stay up towards the front with as much support as possible.
2 minutes and 24. This is starting to tumble just a little bit. I asked Sean earlier on what we can expect from Valverde, if we're going to see a little spark of the old life in the old dog, who's going to be, of course, retiring at the end of this year. We're saying goodbye to quite a few. Vincenzo Nibali, of course, is also calling it a day at the end of this race, and a couple of others as well. Is there going to be a day, Adam, where Valverde turns it on, do you think? And is it a day like this?
I think he's been turned on already, Carlton, but the level is just so high here that it is very difficult for him to do so. We saw him a couple of days ago going up Sierra Nevada, protecting Mas, moving up to the front to make sure he's in position. So I think all of his eggs are in that basket right now. He's trying to protect Mas. We might see him leading into the final climb of the day, protecting him. It's difficult to look at. I'd love to see it, though. I'd love to see Valverde shine. And Nibali.
He has, but the pair of them have been real entertainers, whatever your view of Valverde. I know he raises hackles amongst some, but you know, it's certainly one of the major features in Spanish cycling. And thank heaven we've got this new wave of youngsters to entertain us. It's been great seeing them come to the fore, Adam.
The youngsters have, but I'm not sure Valverde will probably agree with that. But I'm saying this is great, but also, come on, you're too fit now, you kids.
There's a bit of that. Oh, you can count your blessings. Adam Blythe has joined us. And indeed, Dan Lloyd and Robbie McEwen will be joining us very, very shortly.
Dan's just behind me, actually, practicing his golf swing in the commentary box.
Well, Dan was used to swinging as a cyclist as well, so it kind of fits. 78.4 kilometres from home. 2 minutes and 20. It's been moderated, Adam. There has been a change of complexion behind, and I think this day it could suit a few teams to make it just slightly more difficult for the fast men, just in case they had ideas above their station at the end of what will be a long day, but also a testy one at the very last.
Well, I'd like to get Sean's opinion on this. It's something we spoke about on the breakaway this morning. I think Primož Roglič and his team are going to be up for trying to have a little move go today towards a finish. It is a very difficult final, and in my head I think Dan mentioned it as well on the show, that the importance of trying to be in position, get into the front with your team. A lot of teams today I think will do that a little bit too early with that one climb beforehand, so there'll be a big fight, and eventually when they get to that sort of 2.5k to go mark, I think most of the sprinters will be almost isolated. So I think the likes of Primož will try and take advantage of that and maybe just get a few little sneaky seconds on Remco coming into the finish. But I'd like to get Sean's opinion if he's not snuck off for his 5 guys already.
No, I'm still here, and I think yes, it will be a final where the climb before the run to the finish, that is going to be vital, and I think that will stretch the peloton out. So for the GC men, it might not be as difficult as we see on the stage previous, where Pedersen won easily. I think for the GC men, it might be a little bit more easier to get positioning, and that's going to be important for the likes of Evenepoel, Mas, all of those guys, and of course Roglič. We know he's always a danger one in these uphill finishes, and we did see him on that occasion as well. You know, the team put him into a position, but he just wasn't able to gain any time on the other GC men really, and it depends on how many teams have got number of riders left there, and that is going to be an interesting one in this final, and that climb before the one to the finish is going to be of vital importance. If you're going to be a team that want to position your man for the sprint, or if you want to position a guy who is up in the GC, all is important that you have a number of riders to be able to do that.
I want to see how Fred Wright goes.
Not good.
Yeah.
I think he's suffering, Carlton, because we see him. He was in the breakaway on Sunday, and he really faded out of it and finished at 27 minutes. So unfortunately, I think the efforts he's putting in here. Also, let's not forget the Tour of France. He had a great performance, and in both he has a great, an unbelievable ride in both the Tour of France and in this Vuelta. But I think it's starting to take effect now because of the racing he has done. Very aggressive, being in breakaways, and unfortunately he was very close to getting a victory, but it did not happen. So I'd be concerned for the rest of the Vuelta that he might have difficulty. Fatigue is setting in.
Well, he's got a contract extension, which is fantastic. It'll take him to the end of 2023, so he knows where his home will be. if he continues to shine, and I hope he does today, tomorrow, indeed, he probably have some options as well. You never know with Fred Wright. He can shine as bright as you like in most terrain. But a punchy finale today may well suit him. I would love to see him go strongly. Yeah, he's been rewarded quite rightly, I think it's fair to say, Adam. We've loved watching Fred Wright, both at the Tour and here.
He has. His ultimate reward of a stage win, though, has not come yet, and he's still hungry for it. So I disagree with Sean. I think that him losing time in that breakaway, I think he realised he wasn't going to win and just sat up after that. Sorry, Sean. It's probably the first time I'm going to disagree with you, and the last. But I just think Fred, being a little bit better climber than a typical sprinter, has just backed right off, maximised his recovery time as such. And I think he'll be up there or thereabouts today, especially as it's trundling along as it is.
Second best day, as we've described.
I don't agree with you, because we have agreed and disagreed. You say we haven't disagreed and agreed much. We have disagreed and agreed many times.
That's very true. Okay.
And may it always continue, chaps, because that's the beauty of the sport. Yeah, exactly. I mean, if we all knew what was going to happen, what would be the point?
Well, Dan Lloyd seems to know what's going to happen every day with his predictions so far. Where he's getting this information from, but I'm suspectful.
Well, he's taken up golf. So they used to say that cycling is the new golf. So cycling is the new golf is the new cycling, I guess you might say. We're going to find out from Dan in a few moments' time just how it's going. He's only taken up
now if you want.
Go on then. How's it going, Dan?
Absolutely brilliantly, I've got to say.
He's talking about your golf.
Out of the 18 holes yesterday, I had 2 pars. I only lost 2 balls, but I found 4, so I was up on that. whilst I was rummaging around for the 2 that I lost. Quality ones as well, according to my son Ralph, who I was playing with. The good thing with me and Ralph playing is that he's very good and I'm not. So it's not particularly competitive between us, but yeah, I was happy with the 2 pars, one of which he only parred as well, so I equalled him on that hole.
I see. You take your merits where you find them. Clearly, Dan. I'm going to take my lunch now, if that's all right.
That's absolutely fine. Thanks, Carlton. Enjoy.
Will do. See you later.
Look forward to hearing from you later on, and same goes to Sean Kelly. Well, it's a quiet day after the rest day yesterday at La Vuelta a España, and I'm sure a lot of the general classification riders will be very pleased about that, and in particular, Adam, Remco Evenepoel, I imagine, will like the fact he's got a couple of easy days back-to-back ahead of what is to come and everything that's going to be thrown at him.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? I think he's, after his little tumble he had, a couple of hard days straight after that, he definitely will have enjoyed a rest day, that's for sure. And as a young kid, he's probably, we know how well they can recover. So these, especially the pace they're at now, he'll be welcoming this with open arms, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's not the hardest final week of a Grand Tour, or indeed of La Vuelta a España, that we've ever seen by any stretch of the imagination, but there's certainly some terrain upon which his closest rivals and their teams can put Evenepoel and Quickstep Alpha Vinyl to the test. He was already tested at the weekend. We didn't really know what the result was on Saturday. He didn't pass, but he certainly didn't fail either, but he came back on Sunday, and I would say passed with flying colours. We thought there might have been signs of weakness there on that summit finish that they had on Saturday's stage. But on Sunday, he took control of the race with his team and then went on to control the stage and his rivals himself. So although he lost a little bit of time to Enric Mas and a little bit of time to Primož Roglic, he seemed content, and he has every reason to be so. But 6 days still remaining. Unlikely we'll see a huge change on today's stage, perhaps none at all on the general classification, but you just never know. But a couple of lumps and bumps in towards the finale, and as we keep talking about, it's the same final few kilometres as the stage that they had into this town in 2017. If you look back at the results that day, there were a few small time gaps amongst the general classification contenders that year. Different run-in, we've got a hill before that final climb today, which in theory makes things harder, but might also mean that a number of teams don't have the strength to really ramp the pace up on the final climb towards the finish. So we'll wait and see how it pans out. What we can be sure of, though, is that thus far, for everyone barring these two and the 2 or 3 riders who've been working on the front of the main peloton, it's been a pretty easy day. What that does mean, though, is that we're going to have a lot of fresh legs towards the finish. Well, we'll be bringing Robbie McEwen in shortly, but first up, let's hear from Garcia Acosta of Movistar. We're already in the third week of racing, and it was doing very well the past weekend. Tell us what you expect from him in this last week of racing. Well, it's going to be a tough week because there will be some very difficult terrain. Today is not a day with a lot of steep gradients, but we'll need to see what happens day by day, which will be the key stage of this week then. I'm not sure, but I imagine it will be all of them together. But the one to La Sierra de Madrid will be the toughest day. They'll come from racing on the Alto de Pional, and the day after is also very tough, and especially Sierra de Madrid. There's no special day because anything can happen at any time, but on paper, the last day will be tough due to the tiredness from the two first weeks and the two previous days to that stage. So how well do you see Enric going? Because we saw him enjoying this Vuelta, and moreover, the last few days being up there with the best riders ahead of them, it must have given him more confidence. Yeah, Enric's feeling good. He's doing very well on this Vuelta and enjoying the racing, so for this reason, he's a lot more calm and more relaxed. That's a new side to him, actually. During the Tour de France, he was not having the best of times, but now it's different, and we're very happy for him. And it has been a remarkable shift for Robbie McEwen from the Enric Mas that we saw on the roads of France just a few weeks before this started, and the Enric Mas that we've seen for the last 2.5 weeks.
I'm really impressed with Enric Mas, and I wasn't honestly expecting him to be this good in the Vuelta, but he stepped out of the Tour really towards the end, so I didn't think he was going to gain anything in the way of more recovery or, you know, that extra bit that is going to make him that good. But gee, he's been good in this Vuelta. He's been on the attack more than I've ever seen him. I'm just really impressed with how he's gone. And even though we've been talking about who's lost out to Remco Evenepoel in the time trial, I mean, everybody did, of course. But Enric Mas actually did a really good time trial that day. And, you know, even though it was a chunk of time for him as a non-time trialist, I thought he rode a great time trial. And, yeah, I think he's not out of it as far as this Vuelta is concerned for the overall. No, well, any one of the first three can still win this, even though Evenepoel and Roglic look the strongest. I still think Mas is capable of winning this Vuelta. I'd agree, and I'd also agree that was probably one of, if not the best individual time trials that Enric Mas has ever had as a professional rider. It was incredibly impressive. And we could be sure that the Spanish press and Spanish-speaking press are talking a lot about Enric Mas. The rest of the world, not so much. Most of the attention is, of course, on Remco Evenepoel and the man that's won this race 3 times previously, Primož Roglic. And from that point of view, Adam, this could benefit Enric Mas because certainly the other day when he went on the attack, there wasn't a reaction from either Roglic or from Evenepoel. It almost harks back to that Giro d'Italia where Roglic and Nibali were the two that were really watching out for each other, and all of a sudden Richard Carapaz went up the road.
Yeah, although I think with Roglic he just didn't have the legs the other day. No, I don't think he was feeling good enough, and he didn't want to risk going on the attack and maybe losing more time being dropped. Remco maybe riding back up to him and putting in a little dig and dropping him as well. So he knows what he's doing. He's very, very experienced, as we all know. I think with him, he's just trying to gain as much as he can with minimal effort on a day like that when he was suffering. Well, we think he was suffering. It looked to be like he was. He didn't look as comfortable as he the day that he did before. So I'm intrigued to see how he's going to go, how he's recovered, how he's going to approach this last week. If he's going to try and just chip away at the seconds every couple of days, try and maybe look at the bonus seconds on each stage and just maybe look towards them a little bit, or is he going to save it all for one day and risk all? And oddly, I'd like to see the risk all, but I'd also like each day just to see little time gaps, less and less and less and less, just purely for me.
Selfish reasons.
Yeah, complete selfish reasons.
We want entertainment.
We do. I mean, it'll be brilliant if, you know, by the time it comes to around by that penultimate day, Primus has managed to get, let's say, 30 seconds on when he's within a minute. Then we'd be clapping our hands with game on here. Whereas a minute and a half on Remco, it's going to be difficult, I think.
Contrary to us, every single Belgian fan will be hoping that time gap goes a little bit up every single day. Actually, I was looking back at the race leaders of the Vuelta so far. So we had Hessink, then Turnesen, then Affini, then Roglic, all from the same team, of course, over the first 4 days. Then Rudy Mollard for a day, and then we had Remco Evenepoel from then on. So I think he's now in his 11th day as leader of this Grand Tour, and he's the first Belgian to have led a Grand Tour for that amount of time in 44 years. So you can understand why there are a few Belgian fans who are looking to have a huge party this Sunday in Madrid or at home in Belgium, celebrating Remco Evenepoel's victory. Having lived in Belgium, Robbie, what do you think the scenes would be like upon his return to the country if he goes there with the red jersey?
Not sure I'm expecting scenes quite like what we saw in Denmark with Jonas Vingegaard after the Tour de France. But it will be mayhem. There will be parties everywhere. You know, there'll be a massive homecoming wherever that's going to be exactly for Evenepoel. It's been a long time between drinks for the Belgians as far as winning a Grand Tour is concerned. 1978 was the last winner of a Grand Tour for the Belgians. And maybe not the riders who would directly come to mind. It wasn't Eddie Merckx, it wasn't Freddie Martins, it was Johan de Muynck in the 1978 Giro d'Italia.
Was he touted as the next Eddie Merckx at the time?
I don't know, I was only 6. Hadn't been to Belgium yet either.
So 2 riders up the road, they being Ander Okamika, riding for Burgos BH, and Luis Angel Marte of Euskaltel Euskadi, who had promised at the start of this race to plant a tree for every kilometre that he's been in the breakaway. Unfortunately, he hasn't been feeling particularly good throughout the Vuelta a España, so he spent a few kilometres off the front up in the Netherlands. I think it's about 24 kilometres on day 3, if my memory serves me correctly. Since then, we've not seen him up the road, but that's a lot of trees planted today, because the stage in total is 189 kilometres. So he's already spent over 120 in the breakaway, and he's really been using this race and his social media following to really highlight problems in climate change and highlight things that we can all do to change for the better, and particularly obviously the sport of cycling that he's involved in. But it relates back to his home area, where they had some really bad forest fires last year. And the climb that we finished on one of the stages in the middle week, which was severely affected by those forest fires. So I know the Vuelta a España has agreed to match every tree that he plants, and I think so has his team, Euskaltel Euskadi, as well. So he's been doing a great job of highlighting some of the world's problems at the moment that I think we're all aware of, but always good to see an athlete putting his sort of fame to good use, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, it's a great initiative, and it's good to see him going out on a limb today. Try and hold your sides in there, Dan, I know.
Sorry, I just had to turn my mic off for a few moments there whilst I was laughing uncontrollably, Robbie.
Yes, I know. It's that sort of day. That's why I thought I'd go with that.
I think we can leaf them out now, though. Any more jokes?
Oh, crikey. It's going to go from bad to worse. Back to the race. We did have a couple of non-starters this morning, and not sure whether either of them were due to COVID-19. Esteban Chavez of EF Education Easy Post, certainly from the press release, that was not the reason. I think he was citing fatigue from the race and hoping to freshen up ahead of a lot of the one-day races in Italy towards the end of this season, of which there are many points available at those races. So you could see why that team might have taken the choice just to freshen him up ahead of those, rather than digging himself too deep of a hole by the end of this race. The other rider who went home before the start of today's stage is Maxim van Gils, who rides for Lotto Soudal. So they're down to just the 4 riders: Thomas de Gent, Cedric Burns, Filippo Conca and Kamil Malecki. So 4 of the original 8 left for Lotto Soudal, and it's the case for quite a few teams here actually, that they've not got a huge number of riders left within the race this year.
That'd be a cheap party in Spain for them after, with only 4 of them.
Yeah, it can get very lonely on the bus, can't it, when you've only got a couple of riders left. I think it happened to Orica Greenedge back at the Giro d'Italia a few years ago. You rejoin us with 65.7 kilometres remaining if you've been away for a commercial break. The gap has not changed significantly, but it's just under the 2-minute mark at this point. Our 2 leading riders, Okamika and Mate, enjoyed a maximum advantage of a little over 4 minutes, and it's been the same teams who've been controlling things on the front. Mainly Trek Segafredo for Mads Pedersen and the French squad Cofidis for Brian Coquard. They finished 1-2 on the stage a few days ago. And it's those two who are most confident on a stage finale that is pretty similar to the one that Mads Pedersen won on a few days ago. As a sprinter, Robbie, you in your heyday, how would you have been looking at today's finale?
Nervously.
Can I just say, when Dan asked that question, then Robbie took a big deep breath with like almost a sigh in his face to be like, oh.
Just trying to get some oxygen to my brain muscle. Nervously, and not with a great deal of confidence, but on the other hand, I would have approached it with a nothing to lose attitude. So just go in, go 100%. Everybody expects you to blow up and get dropped. And what if you don't?
Yeah, we keep talking about the last time that a stage of the Vuelta finished in the same manner on the finishing town today. It was back in 2017. The big difference that year was that the climb that comes before it this year, which is not steep, 3.6%, but 3.5 kilometres long, was not included that year. And so when you look back at the race footage, you can see that Quick Step, I don't know what their co-sponsor was at the time, but leading Matteo Trentin out. Firstly, they had a huge number of riders there who were all fresh because it had been flatter on the run-in. Secondly, the class of the rider that they had at their disposal was quite immense. So Bob Jongels, Julian Alaphilippe, a couple of other big hitters. Yeah, Terpstra. So there's some big engines there that were able to lead Matteo Trentin out from the foot of the climb towards the finish and really stretch things out, which eventually resulted in a couple of time gaps amongst the riders. When you look at the footage at the line, you look at it and think, my goodness, that's a pretty hard climb that they must have gone up for the gaps like that to be appearing. I guess the difference today, Adam, could be that we've firstly got that previous climb that might mean a number of teams don't have everybody at their full disposal, and also that we don't have many teams that have a full complement of riders back. So it could be a slower entry and initial few hundred metres to that climb today than we saw in 2017.
It definitely will be, and at that point in the race now where there'll be a lot of guys getting to the bottom of that second to last climb and just pull the pin as well. They'll sit up, they'll recover going into the finish. If they have to do a job, they'll stay up there for as long as possible. But I think for a lot of them, without much of a job to do today, they'll be fairly relaxed when they get to that bottom climb, pull the pin, wait for tomorrow, cruise into the finish, and maybe try and get into break for tomorrow on what we've seen, which is becoming almost a regular within it now. On these hard mountaintop finishes, the breakaway is almost lasting each and every time, with Jay Vine, Carapaz as well. Aronsman. So yeah, I think there'll be a lot of riders who are not bothered about GC will get into that bottom climb, pull the pin, steady away until the finish, and then have another bash tomorrow to reduce the group even more.
Yeah, of course, they can have a bit of a wake-up call, all of the sprinters and all of the GC riders in the final, I would say, probably 30 to 20 kilometres of today's stage. We've got a bonus sprint comes with 28.4 kilometres remaining. That also includes the bonus seconds, so whatever happens, whether the break is caught by then or not, there'll be at least 1 second up for grabs for the first rider across the line. Do you think Mads Pedersen will even bother with that intermediate sprint today, Robbie, given his advantage in the points classification?
I'd be surprised if he does, because as you said, he's got such a massive advantage, and any effort that you make prior to those climbs or prior to the finish is going to cost you today. So I think it'd be better left alone. And you know, when you look at the front of the peloton now and the teams that are riding, and the lack of the teams of Alpecin, Koenig and Jayco, Bike Exchange Jayco, you can see that the peloton knows what's going on. It's not for the pure sprinters. It is a really tough one.
Well, those are the thoughts of Robbie McEwen. Let's hear the thoughts of Michel Cornelissen.
Michel Cornelissen, how is Tim Merlier still doing in this third week, knowing this would be a chance for him and, of course, Madrid?
Yeah, we had a good rest day yesterday. We had a lot of fun. So that's also important, and you can see the boys are still good.
What do you do when you're having fun?
Laugh a lot, make jokes.
Yeah.
When everybody not feel good, everybody sits still in the corner, but the team spirit was good. We have a few scenarios today. We're going to look what's happening in the race, and then we decide if we go for a sprint for Tim or not.
How is Tim feeling mentally, do you think, after the possibilities he had and he just couldn't grab that win?
Yeah, but that's I told it already earlier. It's not so easy to win a sprint. We talk all about he's the fastest, but you must come in a good position. A few things are so important. In one split second, you can make the wrong move and you lost 5 positions, and that happens a few times behind each other. And it can also happen a few times that everything went well. So we hope, we still believe in him. He believes in himself, so we're going to try it.
What will be decisive for Tim in this final, you think? What's the most important thing?
Yeah, we discuss in the race. He come to the car and then we decide how the legs are. And then also the soigneur is by the finish and he can tell exactly. And sometimes we also look Eurosport, how Sander Kleikers say how the finish is. So yeah, that's also important for us, if it fits him or not.
I'll tell you later.
Okay, thank you.
Dankjewel, man.
And we will hear from Sander later about what the finish looks like today. He spoke, Michel Cornelissen there, Robbie, about the options and that they would decide later on whether or not they go for a sprint with Tim Merlier, the Belgian champion. Robert Stannard must be another option for them, surely.
Yeah, he would be the other option, Stannard, and he climbs a lot better than Tim Merlier does. And I get the feeling they've already resigned themselves to the fact that Tim Merlier will not be getting over those couple of climbs. You know, we've often seen it with him, so good on the flat and obviously very, very fast in the sprint. But when the road goes up, Tim Merlier goes backwards. He rarely survives any sort of uphill in the final part of the race to battle for the win. But Rob Stannard, on the other hand, is pretty handy uphill and has got a good fast finish. So this is a good opportunity, I think, for Stannard. You also see, I mentioned before, how we don't see already Alpecin riding. We also don't see Bike Exchange Jayco, and they'll try with Caden Groves, and he does go uphill quite well. Just depends on how he's feeling on the day, but it is one of those tricky finales that would, I think, encourage a sprinter to say, let's sit back, let's just see how it goes. We're not going to take responsibility, because it is a big thing to get your whole team on the front and say, come on, let's ride, let's chase, use all that energy, and then pop you go on the very first time you go uphill in the final part of the race. It's a tough thing for a sprinter to take on mentally then, when you let your team work all day and then you get dropped straight away. So he's sort of playing it by ear as it goes along, and if he survives, great.
Well,
and
just
if
on
not,
that,
then nothing lost.
On that note there, I did see him coming back from behind the cars, and he did have a teammate in front of him, so protecting him from the wind ever so slightly.
Yep.
But I'm with you, Robbie. I think on a day like today as well, you will always generally feel quite good within this peloton. You're not going to be under stress. It's roll along quite easy. So the legs aren't really going to be too sore, so they just need to have a go anyway, almost maybe on their own as well. Just see what they can do, push your limit a little bit. If you can get over the climb and the team sees you there, then support them. But I don't think they need that full support from the team, especially the likes of Tim Merlier. Danny Van Poppel as well is another one. His team's not on the front, but he'll certainly do what he can, I think, and they should do what they can to stay within it for as long as they can.
Yeah, well, they don't need to ride on the front all day long like Track and Cofidis are doing for certain, but what they will need to do, and if Caden Groves, for example, is going to have a real go at this final and be really serious about it, the team pretty much needs to do a lead out to get him to the foot of that second last hill at the front. So there's a series of roundabouts at around 15.5 kilometres to go, and the road books suggest they're only going to be able to pass on one side, so it could get very narrow. Then there's a right bend, another roundabout, and then you're pretty much 300 metres later at the foot of the climb. So that's a good spot to get to the front with the team, really lead it out and get your sprinter in prime position and give him the best possible chance to survive. Because it also doesn't go straight downhill. You stay up on the plateau for about 3K or 2.5 before you go downhill for 3. and then it's just another 3K on the flat before the uphill to the finish. So there's not any places to really recover and few opportunities to move up.
And it gives those teams a distinct advantage in many respects. They can say, look where we finished on that day that Mads Pedersen won, where Brian Coquard was second. We were nowhere. So why on earth would we put any of our troops on the front today and use their energy? But secretly, they'll all be thinking, actually, we do have a chance today, but we're going to hit you later on, and we're going to have all of our team at disposal to do exactly that. So a load of mind games, as often happens in the world of pro cycling. So we'll see what the strategy of every team is once we get towards those climbs at the end of today's stage. And just to let you all know, it's about 14 to 15 kilometres out, I think, that the unclassified first climb starts today. Then, as Robbie said, hits a plateau for about 3 kilometres. Then there's a descent, and then there's the rise up to the finish, which is the same rise as they used in 2017. So certainly Mads Pedersen is the big favourite. Certainly Brian Coquard, based on what we saw, is the second favourite. UAE Team Emirates, they can play the GC card and say we've got Ayuso here to work for, as well as Almeida. So we can't afford to use any energy to work for Pascal Ackermann or Milano if he decides to sprint today. So yes, lots of very interesting scenarios to play out on today's stage, and I'm very much looking forward to the finish.
Ackermann's an interesting one for me as well, because he's not someone that I'd say he's more of a pure sprinter, but the way that he was climbing the other day on stage 13 when Pedersen won, he pleasantly surprised me with how far up he was there to the front. It'd be interesting today with that 3K climb beforehand to see how it goes. I think he might make if it was just that last climb into the finish as they had a few years ago. But I think that'll be the decider for a lot of sprinters today, is that first initial climb.
Yeah, so I think UAE might end up going with Milano in that case. So I sort of see it as being just a little bit too long and a little bit too tough for Pascal Ackermann. So I think Milano should be the man for them with his climbing qualities. I'm just
crikey!
Oops.
Oh, that was close.
Good escape.
Yeah. Almost looked like Lopez last year getting into the car, didn't it? Yeah, one of the Movistar riders. I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but careering off the road, and he'll be thankful that he wasn't going directly towards that car, which was parked there on the side of the road. And also the fans will be thankful they weren't directly in his way.
That could have been one of the feed bags by the looks of it. A few feed bags getting thrown. Someone might have twisted round the feed bag and just caught his handlebars, pulled him straight into the ditch.
Well, they can be lethal things, musettes, can't they, with the handles on them, if you get them caught round your handlebar in the wrong place. I think it was the Tour of Flanders.
Yeah, I was just about to say the same thing, the Bora rider.
Yeah. we can afford to laugh because he didn't hurt himself. It was quite amusing knowing that he hadn't hurt himself. Yeah. Yes, if you haven't seen that incident before, it was during the Tour of Flanders. It must have been 2020 because I seem to remember it was late on in the year, but the Bora Hansgrohe rider, I forget which one it was now.
Was it Mühlberger?
Might have been Gregor Mühlberger, a man who crashed a couple of times towards the start of this race. But either way, he'd taken his musette bag, he'd got out what he wanted, which wasn't everything within it, and he then threw the remains towards the side of the road. Unfortunately for him, one of the handles on the musette bag caught his STI lever, his brake lever on the front of his handlebars, and so he wiped himself completely out. Yes, as I said, it would have been not something humorous if he'd really done himself any serious damage, but he was back on his bike, and so when you look at the rerun, it was quite humorous to watch.
That was one of the best Flanders starts. We had a fight as well at the start. Do you remember one of the Alpecin riders got disqualified?
Yeah, and an Astana rider, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I've found it. Yeah, it was Gregor Mühlberger. For those who've never seen it, I'm going to not do him a favour. I'll just copy the link and put it on my Twitter.
So you're not doing him a favour?
No, I'm going to say this. I just said I'm going to not do him a favour.
Oh, bless him. That'll be something he wants to put to the back of his mind that never gets brought up again.
I once had an incident myself at Paris Tours, I think it was, where I was just about to throw my musette bag to the side, just at the point where was there any? Sorry, I was just looking down on this and wondering whether there'd been a significant increase in the pace because a few gaps are open up and it's on one long line. But I think it's just everyone gathering themselves after the feed zone. There was a Katusha rider next to me who was just passing that was in my blind spot just as I went to throw it. So I didn't throw it. I held on to it. But in the momentum, one of the loops, one of the handles on my musette bag wrapped around his handlebars. So for a few moments, I was in a huge position of power because I had the musette in my hand.
Just looking him in the eye.
Yes, he did. He looked at me with quite a degree of fear, I've got to say. But yeah, I was kind. I handed him a musette bag and he was able to unwrap it from his handlebars and discard it to the fans on the side of the road. So yeah, always particularly dangerous feed zones. Less so these days because they're more spread out. There are more of them. But back in the day when there was only one feed zone in the entire stage and only two if it was more than, I think, about 220 kilometres, obviously everybody wanted to get their feed bag, and they're all on the right-hand side of the road. Not everybody can be on the right-hand side of the road, so you'd often get crashes as wheels crossed and riders darted to one side.
And dropped feed bags. That was one of the worst. Dropped feed bags and bottles in the feed zone. Someone drops them, you've got one hand on the bars, and down you go.
If you've been away, welcome back. And if you've just joined us from live coverage of the Tour of Britain, a warm, literally warm welcome to you as well. The conditions here at the Vuelta a España, somewhat different to what we've seen so far at the Tour of Britain this year. We were joking just the other day about it being Richie Porte's last race, and I expect going into it, there was a part of him that was thinking, is this the right decision? And after a few days of pouring rain in Scotland and Northern England, I'm sure he's thinking to himself, I've definitely made the right decision. Brilliant race at the Tour of Britain. I absolutely loved it when I used to race it. I really enjoy watching it now, and it finishes at the Isle of Wight on Sunday and goes over a whole load of my training roads around Dorset on the Saturday, including Milton Abbot, which I don't think is a classified climb, but is a really nice climb. Oakford Hill, and before that, Whiteway. So any of you that are down from the Dorset area, I'm sure you know those climbs particularly well. And if you'd like to watch the pros race up them, make sure you get yourselves out onto the road on Saturday, because that is when they're going to be racing over them. So 2 minutes and 12, the time gap. 53.7 kilometres remaining. It's still the same two riders out front, of course. Ander Okimika, the former triathlete, will forever be known as such in my mind. A bit like Roglic, the former ski jumper, or Jay Vine, the former Zwift Academy winner. But yeah, he won the middle distance Spanish national championships in triathlon in 2019, but has since switched to being a full-time road rider. And with him for company is the experienced rider from Huescatel Escudi, Luis Angel Mate, 38 years of age now. So presumably the end of his career coming fairly shortly, but great to see him up the road. We've spoken about the retirement impending of Richie Porte, Robbie, but I saw the announcement either this morning or yesterday that Cameron Meyer is also deciding to call it a day at the end of this year. Any words on his career?
Oh, he has had a fabulous career, just tremendous. Maybe not as well known by the general public for his exploits on the road, where he was a really solid professional, make no mistake. He was twice a Australian national champion on the road. He also won the time trial. He also won the Criterium National Championship. But I think what most people would remember Cameron Meyer for is his 9 World Championship titles on the track. And you know, when he was at his peak, he was without doubt the very best points race rider there has been. I mean, not only in his generation, I've never seen anyone ride a points race like him.
He changed the game.
He was so versatile. Yeah.
He really did.
So versatile.
I remember getting on the track with him in 2015, I think it was, after... I think I was still in the teammate with him then. It was when we were both at Orica, and I jumped onto the track, not having ridden the track. It was in the winter, and Cam was doing all the track World Cups, everything. So he was flying, and he just single-handedly demolished the whole field, right from the first lap until the finish. He literally rode circles around everyone. He was unbelievable. It was sort of that fear of when Cam was racing, of, you know, this is going to be brutal. One of the great things he did, sorry to go into track racing, but everyone would follow him around the track. They'd just mark him out. So he would go to the top of the track, everyone would follow him up, and then he'd just ride flat out around the top of the track. So there was no rest. You ride flat out at the bottom of the track, or you follow me and you ride flat out around the top of the track. He was on another level. I'm sure he did that in 2015 as well, just to annoy me, because you know I was creeping.
It's a good job he didn't do it during one of the other years, Adam.
I know, exactly. Thank you very much, Dan.
So I believe Cam's going to get into a bit of, I don't know if it's actual coaching or athlete mentoring, but you know, sort of going back to his roots. He came up through the West Australian Institute of Sport and then through the Australian Institute of Sport. He's going back home to WA and to Perth. And going to stay involved in the sport and really guide young riders and share his wealth of knowledge and expertise. And just a fantastic career. And I want to say congratulations to Cameron Meyer. I know he tunes into a lot of the races when he's not out on the road himself. So, Cam, if you're listening or hear it on replay, mate, congratulations on an incredible career.
And from myself and from Adam Blythe as well. Yeah, it was brilliant, wasn't it, after he had that brief rest period, shall we call it, where he wasn't sure if he wanted to be in the sport, to come back and win that Australian Road Championships, not just once after all those years, but twice. Fantastic stuff. Here's Jens Zemke.
Jens Zemke, why would today be a Danny van Poppel day, you think?
Yeah, the arrival is not easy. I think it could suit him if he is well positioned. So we analyzed a bit the final, a lot of roundabouts, road dividers, and I said to him he has to be after the last roundabout in the top 3 positions. We expect a sprint of around 15 to 17 seconds. It could suit him, so for winning it's always difficult. Yeah, we have Mats Petersen here and still a couple of strong sprinters, but we go for it.
Try to compare this sprint with the uphill finish to the one where Mats Pedersen went. Would you say this one is easier or harder?
I would say it's easier. You have the climb already 14 kilometers to go. Then you have on a very good road the descent, and you have to be in the position for the last 5 kilometers. And the sections are not as hard as in the last time, especially the home straight.
How confident does Danny look right now after the rest day?
Yeah, I mustn't tell him much. He is already prepared. So I think in the evening he goes into details, and I must say he is pretty professional in this.
So when you look him in the eye and you see today, he's really fired up for a stage like this?
Is it, yeah?
Is he?
Yeah, I mean, he was very concentrated and he was listening. He was also communicating with 2 boys, which are important for him, Jonas Koch and Ryan Mullen. And I think we have a good plan.
That's a good sign then.
It is, absolutely.
Jens Zemke there, sports director for Bora Hansgrohe, talking about the prospects of their remaining sprinter now that Sam Bennett has gone home. Danny van Poppel. I was looking at his results actually a few days ago. His last win came at a very prestigious race, Adam, Banche-Chamay-Banche, last October.
Probably one of the hardest races in Belgium after the Tour of Flanders, I'd say.
Yeah, he won it twice. How many times did you win it?
Once, but I won it solo.
Oh. Anyway, that was his last win, but there's a good reason for that. He was then employed by Bora Hansgrohe and went over from Intermarché Wanty Gobert, primarily and almost solely, you've got to say, to be a lead-out man for Sam Bennett. So most of his duties this year have not been to win himself, but to help Sam Bennett to victories. Only one of those came before the start of La Vuelta, the Eschborn-Frankfurt, I think it was. But they took 2 in the first 2 sprint stages of this race. But from that point of view, Robbie, knowing his position now as having a role as a lead-out man, being here as the person that they're all working for and having his own opportunity, he'll be even more aware that he really needs to try and take it.
Yeah, there is a weight of expectation, and I think Danny's been dealing with it really well in this Vuelta since Sam's been out of the race and Danny's been doing the sprints for himself. It doesn't look to me like he's been crumbling under the pressure of taking over that role. And I know Danny quite well. He's a really, off the bike, an incredibly mild-mannered man. You put him on the bike, it's like a red mist descends. It'd make him a great rugby player. He's actually the size of one as well. But it's like he turns into another sort of beast. And I think he really relishes the chance that he's getting to ride for himself and do the sprints. And it's not something that he feels is holding him back because it's mentally tough to do.
And I guess in some ways it's quite advantageous to know that you've been employed for the role of lead out. He's become well known as one of the best lead out riders in the world. So if he doesn't win here, it's not really going to affect his role or his salary. However, it's just going to be a bonus if he does manage to take a win.
Yeah, let's hope well, fingers crossed he's got it written in his contract for the bonus if he gets a stage win. But he's a brilliant rider. As Robbie said, he's one of those riders, if you're on his team, he's a fantastic teammate. But if you're not on his team, he's one of the riders you want to not get involved with in the peloton, because, as Robbie said, there is a red mist that descends over him, and it's not pleasant. And I've experienced that quite a few times.
We're off for a short commercial break on television shortly, but whilst we're on the break, digital viewers, I'm going to ask Robbie McEwen, who was the ultimate teammate but the worst person to have riding against you, because there are plenty of examples out there of riders that you absolutely detest when you're riding in the bunch, but when they're your own teammate, they're the best one ever. I think for me, although I was never teammates with him, it was Mikhail Shah. That guy was always in my way whilst I was trying to do my job. But I've heard from multiple interviews that he is the ultimate teammate, that he will do everything he possibly can for you. He will shepherd you, he will protect you, he will be there for you when you most need it. But I've got to say, as a person trying to do a similar role, he was very, very annoying.
Yeah, I was in a team with him. I had exactly the same thing before I was in a team. I used to have arguments with him. We were fighting in the peloton, not fighting properly, but pushing each other around. And I became a teammate of his, and he is the nicest human being possible. And as you said, as a teammate, perfect, which made it even more annoying when you came on a team.
I've already come up with two off the top of my head. Nico Eekhout.
Yeah, he rode for Sean's team, didn't you?
Yeah, the man they call Rambo. His attacking raids, there was never a gear big enough. He was always, whatever the biggest one was, he was in it, and he just wanted more. Bigger, bigger, bigger is better. But Nico, but a really good teammate. We rode together in the Lotto team, and good for a lead out. He's never missing a break. You never had to ask, when the attacks were going, you never needed to ask, where's Nico? He was going with every single one of them. But riding against him was a nightmare because he never stopped attacking. Talking about the red mist, like we said with Danny Van Poppel, Nico Eekhout had that tenfold. So he was a beast to ride against, but he made a very good teammate. And another one that I rode with later on when I was with Katusha was Danilo Napolitano. He was horrible to ride against. He was a real pain in the backside. But geez, he was a good teammate and a really nice bloke. And I never realised until we were teammates. I mean, he now and again said hi, but on the bike and in the races, it was like, can you just be elsewhere, get away from me? But as a teammate, he was really, really good.
It's a name I've not heard for a long time, Danilo Napolitano. He's got his own gelateria in Italy now.
Has he?
They only serve strawberry, chocolate and vanilla, I think.
Oh dear, it's been a long year and a long Vuelta a España, but I am very, very much looking forward to both the finale of the entire race and the prospects of that big GC battle. And indeed today, I spoke about this at length, I think, on the last stage that Mads Pedersen won, or the only one, of course, at the Vuelta a España. I love these sorts of finishes which bring both sprinters and general classification riders into the fold. And we might well have that today. We can't be sure of it, but both will want to be up there by the end of today's stage. It's going to be a good one, so make sure you stick around. If you've been away and you missed our talk about who were the most annoying riders that were the best to have as teammates, you will have to subscribe to our digital platforms to find out who. No, I'm only joking. Adam also agreed with me on Mikhail Shah that he was the nicest person in the world, but the worst person to race against. Robbie had two names, Nico Eekhout, who in 2009, I think it was, rode for the Sean Kelly team, and Danilo Napolitano, who was an Italian sprinter who retired not that many years ago, actually, I don't think it was.
Do you know another one, and I'm sure you two can back me up on this? I don't know if any of you are teammates with him, but Terpstra. Terpstra is another one who was an absolute nightmare. But anyone's been in a team with him, they say he's an absolute, like, the best teammate to have. But when you're not on his team, just get, like Robbie said, go away.
Another one was Juan Antonio Flecha, our now colleague at Eurosport. He was a nightmare to ride against. Yes. Well, as you can see from that graphic, average speed not particularly high today, 38.8 kilometers per hour. Probably one of the slower days we've had, even on the mountainous terrain that we've seen so far at this year's race. They've had no real need, these two riders at the front, to press on. And as such, the bunch behind have had no real need to press on either. They've got things fully in control. They allowed it to go out to 4 minutes. It's now just under half of that, but they've still got 44 kilometers remaining, in which to light things up, bring the brake back, and go for the sprint at the end of the stage. Now, we spoke earlier about Robert Stannard and whether or not he might have kind of co-leadership at Alpecin-de-Koning today. This morning I was having a look back at some of his results. He took his first pro win, the general classification at the Tour de Wallonie, not that long before this race started. But I was also looking back to stage 2 of last year's Tirreno Adriatico. These were the results: Alaphilippe, Van der Poel, Van Aert, Pogacar, Aramburu, Stannard, Almeida, Van Avermaet, Wellens and Ciccone. So some pretty illustrious company, Robbie, that Stannard was in that day. I think it was a harder finish than we've got today, but does show that he's got the kit going uphill.
Yeah, he's got a big engine, young Rob Stannard. And we spoke about him the other day, and I said that, well, he's got a sister who's also a professional, Liz, and also used to race with his father, Steve, who was strong as an ox.
I thought you were going to say Ian then.
Old Uncle Ian. No relation is Ian. But there seems to be a theme here with Stannards and Strong. But yeah, Rob has got a hell of a lot of talent, and he was earmarked as a huge talent from in the juniors, and he rode with the what's now the Bike Exchange Jayco team. It was their feeder team when it was Mitchelton Scott, and he came through that team, turned pro, but then he had a really tough time. He got some sort of illness, which I haven't been able to find the information on, but it was quite a rare illness that he then got over. I wasn't sure if it was one that you could get over of it stage with it, and I thought it was something to do with his bones. If someone can fill me in who knows where you can find the story, but he was out of cycling for, I think it was almost a year.
No, I don't remember that. Are you sure that was that definitely Robert Stannard?
Yeah, it was a mystery. I'm certain of it.
You sure? I thought it was another young Australian rider who's since retired, but yeah, we'll have a look into that.
Okay, Twitter.
Well, we've spoken a lot about this stage, which has the exact same final few kilometres as you'll be seeing the riders tackling today. This was when Quick-Step lit things up for their rider in the green jersey, Matteo Trentin, but look at the gaps amongst the riders behind. So fast had they ridden the first couple of kilometres of the rise towards the finish that some gaps opened up. Gianni Moscon, then riding for Team Sky, finished in second place on the day, but it was a year that Trentin almost couldn't be beaten on that type of finish. And here's Alberto. We are here in Tomares, only 600 metres from the finish line. There's a small roundabout where the riders shouldn't have too many issues because the surface is pretty good. It's a stage for the sprinters, but one that is finishing uphill. Quite a demanding stage, but especially it will be a big test for the general classification contenders. We can see how the gaps are getting shorter, and today you can lose some precious time. So we'll see what happens in the final 500 metres of today's stage. If you're watching the breakaway pre-show today, you would have seen that I, with first pick, went for the obvious person, which was Mads Pedersen. Adam, you went for Brian Coquard.
I did.
And Orla went for Fred Wright of Bahrain Victorious, who, as Carlton mentioned earlier, has signed a contract extension which should take him through to the end of next year. I'll get back to that in a moment because I was surprised it was only for 1 year. But, Robbie, who are you going for? Bet for today?
I went with Brian Coquard.
Two great minds think alike there, Robbie.
I like the way that he finished off on stage 13 to Montilla. He was such a long way back, and everybody else was struggling to make any move whatsoever, and he burst away from the rest of the pack. Of course, Pedersen was already gone, but Coquard was impressive. So if he can be in position today, I give him a really good chance. Go the underdog.
I'd say it's harder as well today than that finish a couple of days ago. Steeper climb towards the finish than rather a drag up to the finish. It would probably suit him even more.
Well, we only got about just under an hour before we will find out. It has been his team Cofidis as well as Pedersen's team Trek Segafredo here who've been doing pretty much all of the work, especially since we had live pictures and judging by the text updates that we had beforehand. We will be hearing from Carlton Kirby again in just a few moments' time, but just before I hand back over, yeah, Fred Wright, they announced a contract extension for him. I think it was earlier on this morning. Oh, actually, I look at it now, and it's to the end of 2025. I initially thought I'd read that it was 2024, which I was surprised about, because given the year that he's had, given the promise that he's shown at the Tour de France, at the Spring Classics, and at this Vuelta a España, I thought it was strange to only extend for a couple of years and not a longer contract, but it is until the end of 2025. So that subject I was about to talk about is null and void.
I'll null and void another one for us as well. I can go back and make a correction. I've got my Robs mixed up. It was Robert Power who had that. Yeah. You're correct. Different Robert altogether. So stand down, Twitter. No longer needed to come to the rescue with that information. Rob Power was the one who had those health problems, and he's been retired since 2021 when Team Quebec and Next Hash pulled out of, well, the World Tour. Well, pulled out, but out of the World Tour. He's now stopped riding.
Well, with those two bits of misinformation, I'll hand you back to Carlton Kirby.
Let's have some more.
Plenty more where that came from.
Get ready for the rush. Oh dear. I was Dan. I also thought that Fred Wright had only got 1 year extension to 23. Are you sure it's 25 now?
I'm pretty sure as well. I saw that. It was 2023 announced this morning on...
Exactly.
Well, I just looked on okay, I'll double check it now. I'll get back to you in a second. But I just looked on Pro Cycling Stats, who don't normally add any additional years unless they've seen it officially. But on their website, his contract or his years with the team extend through to 2025. But I might as well go to the Bahrain Victoria's website and get it from the horse's mouth, as it were.
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, that would be great. Because I was also thinking what a difference it can be, the difference between taking a win and getting very, very, very close. Robbie, Brian Coquard, I think he's your and Adam's choice today. He's a man who has been extraordinarily close so often. Up the Champs-Élysées, just beaten. Was it? I'm just trying to remember who it was that beat him about 5 years ago, wasn't it? Had he won that day, it would have been an entirely different career, and it was very close.
He also went very close in the Tour de France in Limoges in 2015 against Marcel Kittel, beaten in a photo finish. That was an uphill sprint, and pushed Kittel beyond his limit. Kittel couldn't get off the ground after the finish for a good 5 minutes. But Brian Coquard, he's been so close so many times. As we said, he was second again the other day on stage 13. He's the sort of guy I've always thought who should maybe try and beef up a bit, because he's a really good sprinter, but he's a little bit on the light side. So he goes well in those uphill ones, and there's a really specific sprint that suits him. But I think he could be better in a lot more sprints if he put the effort into bulking up a bit.
And here, a reminder of our predictors. Mads Pedersen, Pascal Ackermann, Brian Coquard. Mads Pedersen gets 2 votes, as does Coquard, with, as you well know, in fact, gets 3, because Adams picked him as well. Yeah, it's a cruel game, quite clearly, Adam. You can get extraordinarily close, and just what your career can pivot on, well, a couple of centimetres, quite frankly.
It can, and it can pivot in terms of financial gain as well. Brian Coquart, how close he's been over quite a few years, as Robbie just said, there's something that just needs to change so he can just get that little bit faster, bulking up, whatever it might be. That is the difference between a very good contract, what he's on, to an excellent contract that he's on. And yeah, it can benefit him in many ways more than one, but it's very easy for us to say here in our armchairs that he just needs to bulk up, or he just needs to be faster.
In my mind's eye, I had Alexander Kristoff beat him. It was Andre Greipel in 2015. Yeah, with Coquart extraordinarily close. I remember my French colleagues going absolutely nuts. It was such a shame because Coquart finished in front of Kristoff, Bosenhagen, Damar, Mark Cavendish, Peter Sagan, John Degenkolb, of course, is racing here. Michael Matthews also in the frame. Mathieu Trentin, who won on today's lumpy finish back in 2017 as well. But yeah, 2015 it was that Brian Coquart, to my mind, came so close, and it would have actually changed his mentality as well, I think, Robbie, had he just managed to pip Greipel that day.
Well, it would have given him a bucket load of confidence, and for a Frenchman to get a stage win in the Tour de France, yes, it would have changed his career. I mean, as a Frenchman, if you can win a stage in the Tour de France, especially early in your career, you've basically set yourself for the next 12 years or so to make the rounds of French teams who will just keep on believing. And you see riders go from FDJ to Cofidis and on and on and on through each and every team. And by the time you've done that, you've had a pretty healthy career.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting for Dan to get back with us about Fred Wright, but kind of think
I've got the info.
Oh, go on. Well, some going off to a break, so.
Well, you will have to re-explain to those that are on a break right now what the situation is. It was something I do far too often in just misreading just slightly the tweet. So I think initially I'd looked at the picture from Bahrain Victoria's tweet, which had 2023 on it, and then seeing that there was a year's extension on it. Handily, our former colleague, Carlton, Ashley House, is now working for Bahrain Victorious, and he said Fred's contract was until the end of 2023, but he's now extended through until the end of 2025. And actually, when you reread the tweet, that is quite clear as well. So again, something else that I misread there, but yeah, means that Fred Wright, the Brit, will be with that squad until, well, for at least the next 3 years.
I'm so pleased about that, because I was sort of thinking they've only given him 1 year. Is that because he just didn't quite get there? And I felt a bit sorry for him.
Yeah, we would have given you 2, but you didn't win.
Yeah, well, you know, it happens. That's what I'm saying. It can be so crucial, Dan. You know, your career can pivot on just a single moment, as you well know. How many times were you second in the British Championship?
Yes, twice. And although 4th was always the one I was most disappointed with, because I felt better that day than the 2 that I finished in second. But
is that the year that you went up the mountains and you basically started shouting at the crowd, "Come on, Dan"?
That was the Tour of Britain.
To get them to encourage you.
But that was because I guess that must have been 2012, and Brad Wiggins and Mark Cavendish were both racing after having done so well at the Tour de France, and then Brad going on to win the Olympic gold. So obviously they were massive and still are household names, but particularly that year in the forefront of every mind. So every climb we went up, it was like, "Go on, Brad, go on, Cav," constantly. So at some point I just piped up and said, "Go on, Lloydie," just from the middle of the peloton, to give myself my own bit of encouragement.
Oh dear, I bet it was picked up on the effects mics as well, and people back home who know you go,
yes.
Oh, that's brilliant, isn't it? It's a bit like Robbie McEwen raising his hands when he hadn't won.
I'm still trying to find the photo. I'll come across it. Oh, actually, photos, because I did it twice.
Oh, bless. Oh, all those poor folk on the break. They've missed all this jollity. It's all about to get very, very serious. Our thanks to Dan and to Adam, who will be talking us through unpicking the finale today. And really, that's the business end of the day. And we're rejoined by Sean Kelly, along with myself, Carlton Kirby, and of course Robbie McEwen, to take you to the line today. 2 up the road, thankless task, Robbie. I mean, short straw. It doesn't get much shorter than this one, does it?
Well, in a way, that's why these teams are here, to liven the race up, to spice things and keep the pace in the race. So we spoke about this a few days ago. Why is it we nearly always see the wild card teams doing this? Well, quite often they don't have, with all due respect, the calibre of riders who are able to pull off the big wins in the big moments. And also the organisers pretty much ask them to do this to keep some pace in the race so everything stays on time.
Welcome back, everybody. Roy McEwen describing the move by Okamika and Mate as adding some spice to the day. I think more a pinch of oregano, but anyway, it is about to get pretty tasty. Those of you who are wondering about Fred Wright's contract, Ashley House, as a former colleague of ours, hope to see him back with Bahrain victorious for the race, and has declared that it is indeed till 2025. So worry not. Fred Wright has got a contract extension to 2025, and quite right too, after some spectacular performances, not only in the Tour de France, but of course during this Vuelta as well. Who's going to perform later on? Well, you can see what the intent is by those who are pacing the break at the moment, and they're just slowly but surely winding them in. They've got 1 minute and 5 so far. Trek and Cofidis. Why is that? Well, it's Coquard and Pedersen. Is it going to be a private party today? Far from it. It depends on how it is taken, particularly by the GC men, because they may well get involved. If every second counts, don't be surprised if Primož Roglic pops up at the very last, because we have been here before. And back in 2017, Matteo Trentin, who went on the following year to win the Europeans, also on a sort of a rampy finish in Glasgow, he absolutely, amongst others, of course, just set the ambitions of the sprinters in a little pyre before we got to our finish. And their ambitions died upon the ramps, which we will be experiencing, and they are significant. Not quite sure why we're seeing this shoebox collection, but nonetheless, it's the Valverde del Rio. I don't think Valverde will be involved today, but you never know. It would have been his kind of finish. Yeah, we have an intermediate sprint coming up, and once we've dealt with that, and it'll be upon us before you know it, in about 5 kilometres time, we will then start to race to a place called Santiponce. I'm not quite sure who that was the patron saint of, or indeed what that was the patron saint of, but clear your mind. It is 16 kilometres to go, where all hell's going to break loose, because we have a proper climb there. It's 1.5 kilometres of 6.1%. It's not categorised. We'll go over the crest of it, rather sharpish, downhill, and it will bring us to the business end of the day, where we have a sequence of ramps within which we have a 600 metres section. And there's several steps, by the way, but there's a 600 metres section which is 8.3%. That's a big percentage, and if you are a quick man, that is going to hamper you a lot. So you'd better be a strong man as well, of which Mats Pedersen most certainly is. Brion Coquard is. There's a few others out there as well that would fancy this today, and it might be that the regular pecking order within certain teams changes. However, I would have been backing Juan Sebastian Molano for today had Pascal Ackermann not done a brilliant job of trying to get the better of everybody on Montilla. That's stage 13. You remember when Pedersen came up the hill and Coquard was closest to him? Do not discount Pascal Ackermann. He is looking fabulous at the moment on the ramps. Here he is.
Pascal, what is the secret to be successful today?
Yeah, I think today will be really important to ride in front, because up, down, right, left, many roundabouts, and it will be really hard finish, so also the legs have to be fresh, and we will see. It was a rest day, so it's always special, third week, so we will see who has the best legs today.
Some teams are under pressure. Who is going to control the breakaway?
Yeah, I think there are many sprinter teams. Alpecin, then Trek will be, Green Edge will be there. So there are many teams who want to have a sprint, and it's also lucky for us that there are still some sprinters left. Also Cofidis want to win one stage more, and yeah, I hope we have good community today.
There you are. Pascal Ackermann is always one of those guys that whenever you ask him a question, he's always smiling. I've never seen him look downcast, even when the days have really worked against him. A bit like Esteban Chavez, who sadly was one of the non-starters today. Esteban Chavez always smiling and such a wonderfully modest human being. Absolutely adore the man. He is fantastic and sadly no longer part of this race. Been a tough season for him. Been a tough couple of years actually. Maxim van Giels, also a non-starter for Lotto Soudal. Starting to just impose themselves at the moment is the peloton, led, as you can see, by the red backs here. Sounds like a lethal spider. Robbie will talk about that in a moment, I'm certain. Of Cofidis. And also, of course, doing a lot of pacing, naturally enough, Trek Segafredo. We have two riders up the road, and it looks like Sean, after garnering quite a few trees out there, I think he's going to owe more than 200 saplings he's going to have to plant on the scorched earth that he has pledged to reforest for every kilometre he's in the break. Luis Angel Mate, all his trees, Sean, are going to be matched by the local authority, and also the environment, the Ministry of the Environment. So he's going to treble up today on quite a few arbres. Yes, well, he is, doing a good job for the tree planting, but yeah, for the for his opportunities in the race to do anything, it was never going to happen, unfortunately, in this stage. From the beginning, it was always, going to be a day when the break was going to be very much controlled, and it wasn't a difficult one to control. These two were allowed to ride away very quickly, but yeah, Luis Angel Mate is doing a nice job. He's getting a lot of trees to plant in his off-season. Always nice to look at a flood barrage. Anyway. It's going to come thick and fast in a short while. We're going to race through this sprint. They've just there was a danger with 30 kilometres to go. They're actually going to catch the break too quickly. So it's been a labour of love. Can we describe it as that, Robbie, today?
I'd call it a labour of necessity. Not so much love. I mean, there'd be one person and one team loving it at the end of the day, and of course that's the winner. The rest, a lot of them just going through the motions today, many hoping not to lose time, and even more just be glad to get back to the team bus, off to the hotel and tick another day off, because you're in that vibe of the last week of a Grand Tour. You are exhausted, no matter if you're racing at the front or at the back. Everybody's exhausted, and you're just happy to get another one out of the way. And it's not every day that you have a chance to either go for a big result for yourself or work for someone who can achieve a big result for the team. And some of those days are just getting from A to B.
There is a time, isn't there, Sean, when you get to a point where there's still quite a few days to go and you're feeling the fatigue. And I feel we're just about to go over that kind of crest. Next couple of days, they're going to feel, they'll almost be smelling Madrid and thinking, actually, life's not so bad. And you kind of feel, even if there's some peaks to take, that you're kind of on the run home. Well, yes, you're certainly on the run home when you get into this final week, and the rest day on the Monday. So you're into the week, and when you get a stage like today, another rest day really for a lot of the riders. And yeah, the fatigue is something, some riders are going to be big fatigue here, and they're just going through the motions to follow the peloton here and get through those days to get to Madrid. There's other riders, you feel that bit of tiredness, okay, but you're not majorly fatigued. And I think, yeah, we all had that during 3 weeks. You can finish really strong in the final week, or you can finish with a bit of fatigue. There we go. Breakaway's got something to work for, and that's prize money. And Okamika here has just taken a lead on Luis Angel Mate at a potentially crucial moment. I think he's just possibly misjudged it just a little bit. Luis Angel Mate not happy about this, battling back. It's nice to see them duking it out for the prize money here. And there you go. There may well be a handshake in a few moments' time, but Okamika thought he got the jump. Mate had to work hard, but in the end, he gets the lion's share of the prize money. 20 points, of course, the intermediate sprint. how important is this going to be for those further behind? Are we going to see Mads Pedersen in the green jersey? I haven't seen much of him today. You'll be seeing a lot of him towards the end of the day. I mean, is it really worth the fight at a moment such as this, Sean, with Pedersen at the moment? Mads Pedersen on 284 points, nearest man to him, Fred Wright, on 111.
Well, he's not going to have to fight. We can see him here. He's just put his hand on his teammate's shoulder there just to make a bit of room, and you can see they're just going to lead him through here. And he will take the maximum points here. His team is just going to roll him through, and this is not going to be, take anything. It's not a problem for the later in the finish where you have to, make a big sprint and a big run into the point where he's going to take the maximum points again for the green jersey.
Well, Movistar just quite fancied having a few, to be honest. That's not Enric Mas who's got up there, is it? Can't quite see at the moment. But Mads Pedersen adds to his tally. It's going to be a handsome one. It's a shame that the points allocation varies. So it's very difficult, Robbie McEwen, to make comparisons in terms of points record tallies along the way.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I guess when it comes to winning the points classification, it doesn't matter what your points total is, how many you've got in front of the next one, for the record books, that is. I mean, we did speak about it briefly at the Tour de France, but it changes so often. They rejig things on a regular basis that it's not like there's a record points total for the green jersey that in any way counts for anything or has any real meaning. It's just whether you win that jersey or not, and whatever's behind that, nobody really cares, to be honest.
Well, I've got two fellas with me today who've been amongst the very, very best, if not the best, in their eras. It's been brilliant. So who's going to be the best today? That's the big question. Have you changed your mind, Robbie?
No, I'm going to stick with Brian Coquard. I think he's a good chance.
Sean, what's your pick?
Well, I think I said at the earlier part of the day, Carlton, Pedersen is going to be very difficult to beat again. The way he's riding, but the question is the way he's riding in this race and going into breakaways, and being out there all day. There was a point when he needed maybe to take an advantage in the points classification because of the difficult days, the mountain stages, just to have that advantage points numbers over the GC men, but that's gone a long number of days ago, and he still keeps going on the breakaway. So that's a question: when will he pay for that? And it could be today, because he's had a Tour of France which he's battled in the breakaways, got his stage win, of course, and this race he's been in breakaways so many times. I'm afraid it's going to start hitting him, and will it be today, maybe in the run to the line? But yeah, difficult to see who's going to beat him here.
Well, I'm going to go with my heart today, and I'm going to say Pascal Ackermann, because I was so wanting him to win, because he's really struggled. And I think when he was given the nod ahead of Sam Bennett, which caused Sam, of course, to jump ship to Quick-Step Alpha Vinyl, and then things didn't work out once the extra pressure was put upon him. He didn't get the wins that he required and made the move to UAE Team Emirates, and it hasn't really worked out there either, I'm afraid. And it must have been quite wounding to see Sam Bennett thriving at Bora Hansgrohe, the team he then was forced ultimately to leave in his wake. But yet he is such a nice guy, Pascal Ackermann. And I think I said it in the run-in, actually, where he came so close, bravely setting off far too early. If he can get his timing right today, unlike he did in Montilla, where Pedersen won and Coquard came through later on when Ackermann sat up, I would love his smiley voice to be matched to a victory. And I just hope that it is he today. But it would take a lot, especially to beat the choices that my colleagues have made here. 25.3 kilometres to go before we get to home. But, Robbie, we're about to engage with the first of a sequence of climbs at Santipons. I don't know how you pronounce it. I'm just going to have to stick with that. Pedersen 1 point shy of the 300 mark. This is enormous. If he gets a good points finish today. Fred Wright could also be a feature, by the way, at the end of today, and so could Primoz Roglic. Do not count them out, because this is an odd one today. Yeah, the climbs start Santipons.
Indeed, Carlton, we do have those couple of climbs, and I've been looking through the start list and tried to have a look at who could be the spoilers for the sprinters today, because if it does get too hard, it'll be an intriguing battle to see who's the quickest at the finish of the guys who can get over these climbs intact. Looking at the last couple of times the race has come here, it's a bit of a mixed bag, and it's a very difficult run to the line. So, I think it presents an opportunity for riders to jump away, and why not Richard Carapaz on the last steep section in that final kilometre, or even the likes of Sergio Higuita, these climbers with a bit of punch, with a good strong attack in the legs, to spring a surprise over any fast men who have managed to survive. And even, as you said, Primož Roglič is well known for striking when no one expects it.
Or perhaps Fred Wright.
Correct. Could be Fred Wright too. And although Fred's not a sprinter type, and he's just so strong that I think this sort of finish today suits him better than the one, for instance, in the stage where he was in the break with Jesus Herrada, where Herrada won the stage. Fred was probably did the fastest sprint. He just started it too soon. It couldn't last. The others come over the top. The same goes for someone like Samuele Battistella. He was pretty quick on that day as well. Tough finish like this may be a good one for him as well.
It's going to be rock and roll, Sean, and nobody quite knows who's going to set the tempo.
Yes, well, it is going to be a rock and roll, and the way the stage have been today, with this run in, there's going to be quite a lot of teammates in the mix. It's not a case where you have a real difficult climb where there's a big selection. So it is another complicated one, and yeah, it's a one where the sprinters and the punchers going for the stage win, they're going to be very keen to be up there and have to be up there in that top places as you get to get the run into the final ramp to the finish line. The GC as well, because they are concerned about the gaps appearing and losing a number of seconds. So all of that is going to make it very, very nervous, and yeah, it can be messy then as well, because if there's teams not able to keep the pace real high, it can get crowded on the front of the peloton, and that's where you can get crowded out at the wrong time as a sprinter or as a GC man, and you find yourself in the position where you do not want to be 30 places plus further down in that group, and then the splits appear. So again, this is a one now where it's going to be very nervous, and the concern will be with the easier stage, there's going to be quite a lot of teams, and a mixture of teams up there as well that really haven't a chance of doing anything, but they're going to try. And some of the smaller teams, they will be thinking, well, if I get the right position here and I get the right run, you never know what could happen. I might be able to get on the podium or even win. So yeah, it's going to be probably a scrappy finish possibly, and that is always the concern, and that's what makes it nervous here for a lot of the riders who want to be in the very front of the stage going into the final kilometres.
It's interesting, when we came to Tomares last time, it was stage 13, so it was founded in a different part of the race. Not quite the same level of exhaustion, I think it's fair to say. 3 stages later is what we're dealing with, and of course post rest day this time by. So it could be that we have a different kind of feel to this. We will get the thoughts of Roy McEwen on exactly that point in a few moments' time as our wider Eurosport family just comes back together. Robbie, the last time that we had this sprint finish in 2017, it was an earlier part of the race, but a more fatiguing section, because we didn't have the gift of a rest day immediately before it. So how much effect will that have on the complexion of the finale in comparison?
Well, the peloton in general is always just that little bit fresher coming off a rest day. Although now they're on to stage 16. Back then it was stage 13. Not a huge difference in how many stages they already had in the legs, but yes, certainly coming off the rest day, you do get the chance to freshen up. Doesn't work for everybody. Some can come out of the rest day and have trouble getting the legs going, have trouble getting that engine back up to full revs. But on the run in now, with 21 kilometres to go, they're only around 5.5 kilometres from what I think is the point where teams need to get their leaders to the front. There's as you come into Saint-Hypens, there's a series of roundabouts that come in about 2 kilometres before the climb starts. I think, as far as the road book is saying, they have to pass on the right, so it could get quite narrow. They could become real pinch points, so being at the front will be really, really important for both the GC riders, but particularly the sprinters, if they want to survive the first of the 2 climbs. So I think we're going to start to see lead-out trains from around that point, try and get to the front, be in control, give their sprinter a really easy ride to the foot of the climb, and then it's hang on for grim death.
Hanging on, Sean, and at the moment you can see, I guess partially because of the rest day, I know we're deeper into the race than last time we visited here, but it is very, very compact down there, and with the roundabouts that Robbie has been describing, and also the rises and falls, the climbs that we're going to be engaged with, and so many riders that think they've got a chance today, apart from the sprinters, this could get very chaotic, if not a little dangerous.
Yes, and compared to the last time we were here, I think the running was easier as well. We did not have that hill we have coming up now shortly. And it depends on how they ride it as well. If they ride it at a steady pace and you allow the sprinters teams just to control, you know, they will set a pace not to put their sprinters in difficulty. And then we could come to the finish with a very big group. But if they do start pushing on, it should stretch the peloton out a bit more. So, yeah, the last time we did see Quick Step, you know, they had a big, powerful team here and they blitzed it in the final number of kilometres and it was stretched out very well. So, you know, that also has, you know, a big importance in this running. If you have the pace real high on the front, well, then it's not going to get as crowded on the front of the bunch, and it could be an easier run-in. And for the GC men, that's what they would like. But you know, you cannot do that with your team either in the final kilometres, because if you do too early as a sprint team, well, then you're going to, you know, burn your men earlier on. As a GC team as well, you want to keep 2-3 riders, preferably around your leader, to take him all the way to the finish, or as close as the finish as you can, and that means, you know, the final kick to the line where they can defend for their set and keep him in a good position. So, you know, all of that, and that is, I suppose, the problem here for the teams. That's where you have to be alert and you have to be on the front and just, yeah, no risk at all on a stage like this. And for Remco Evenepoel and the others, you do not want to lose any second at all here on a stage like this one.
How nice to see him looking so relaxed to engage the camera, give us a little bit of a wave. He is a showman, which is fantastic. I don't think he's going to have an opportunity today to stretch his own legs, but there's a certain philosophy that says the safest place to be, if it is busy, and it looks like it's going to be, is out front, Robbie.
Well, it can be, yes, it can be, or right the way off the back, a couple of lengths off the back. It's often we will find Thomas de Gendt if he's not off the front in a break, or indeed chasing one down for a sprinter. And what do you know? There he is, number 111, Thomas de Gendt, in his safe place on a day that he's not gunning for the win. But yes, it's certainly going to heat up. You started to see a few moments ago, you know, teams coming forward. They're more cohesive and starting to look after their number one. And well, that's the sort of thing that looms in front of them. Maybe not quite right over the top of that one. It certainly is a pretty tough climb of around 3 kilometres long.
It is. So we'll start to engage with it. It peaks out with 16 kilometres to go, so you can see that there's an awful lot of interest. John Degenkolb lit it up early on the day that Caden Groves won, far too early, doesn't mind a ramp or two himself, so I'm just wondering if Team DSM, after now being revitalised with that spectacular win from Tiemann Ahrensman just before the rest day, whether it'll be Degenkolb or maybe Joris Neuhaus for them. We have Ezekera for Burgos BH, not the man who's in the break. This is Okamika in the plum colour, but Ezekera might indeed have an option today. Rob Stannard, we think, but Vermeersch might be the man instead of Tim Malia, as we're reminded of just how many battles, or indeed how much entertainment has gone on in these parts in the past. This one of these spectacular Roman edifice looks like a theatre, and it looks like they dug it rather than built it, which is, you know, makes sense. A bit like Scarborough Cricket Ground. Obviously a little bit earlier than that. Some other examples as well. Beautiful. Haven't dwelt on the bull rings, actually, of which we have passed about 10 of them today. I've got lots of information about bull rings and famous matadors, but I'm afraid I've just lost my Romanesque theatre guide. There's so much information that is given to us by La Vuelta. Sometimes it's kind of buried in the pile, I'm afraid. It's where a paper book would be far better than skimming through pages on the internet. Anyway, there you go, old school. Keep it that way, why don't you? Beautiful arboretum, as you can see, right there. That's a garden with, instead of flowers, you have trees. Meanwhile, he's going to be ripping a few up. We're going to find out. 16.8 kilometres from home. We're on a climb, and we're not seeing it, unfortunately, because we're dwelling on this beauty. Time to come home, Sean. It's been a long day.
Yes, it's been a long day, and you know, it's for our viewers difficult to keep everybody entertained, but for the riders as well, it's a long day. And when you're out here and it's riding along like this, you know, those are the days where you you suffer and you lose your concentration, and often we see in those stages where you can have crashes as you're riding along at an easier pace, and have some bad ones as well. And we've got through this stage and we haven't had that. And you know, I remember back in my day as well, and some of my crashes were on days like this where you just totally, relax, and lack of concentration. Something happened and you're not alert, and down you go. And I went out of some races in that way. But we're getting through this one now, and we're into the point now, the final 15 kilometres, where everybody will just start focusing on what's happening. So it's a safer time, and it gets a bit safer in that situation. So yeah, this has been one of these days where it's the transition days, as we talk about. And I suppose, as our good colleague used to say, Paul Sherwin, you need a suitcase of courage here when you're out on the road here as a rider.
Bless him. Sadly missed, of course, pairing with the great Phil Liggett for such a long time. Okamika and Mate, when you find yourself in a break like this, Robbie, you never forget it. They will be on nodding terms. They'll be on nodding. No, well, for us, but they will be on nodding terms, won't they, for the rest of their careers?
Well, you never forget it, and. I remember I did it in the Ruta del Sol Andalusi, actually, down here in 87 or 88. I did about 70 or 80 kilometres out front, because some of the riders said to me at the start, I bet you would not attack and go on the breakaway. And I did attack and nobody followed, and I ended up out in front for 70 kilometres. And I can still remember a lot of that very clearly, where there's a lot of other races I can't remember at all. So it is a difficult one to go out here in front. And I'd like to ask Robbie the question, did he ever go on a solo breakaway?
Yes, I did. I did a couple during my career, a few years apart, and it reminded me not to do it again, because it's not where I won my races. It was a bit of a silly idea, to be honest. Best one I ever did was in a two-man break, and I decided this is not the place to be. I pulled off the side, hid behind the bushes till the peloton came, tacked on at the back, and later on we caught the solo man. I won the stage. Anyway, story for another day. 7 seconds of the break, they're nearly caught as well, but they're not hiding behind the bushes. They're trying to stay out front as long as they possibly can, but they are just about to hit the real climb.
I'd love to know what you're doing behind the bushes.
Just hiding.
All right.
Just hiding.
14.5 kilometres from home then, and it's time to come into town. They're going to be busily displaying not only their Roman theatres and amphitheatres. What's the difference between a theatre and an amphitheatre? I do not know. I think an amphitheatre is in the round, isn't it? So you can do other things like, I don't know. Well, work it out for yourself. It was a bit brutal back then, and it will be today as well. I think that was a bull ring. These guys, well, they have done their share of the work, but right now you can see looming large the green jersey behind. Mads Pedersen suddenly hoves into view. He's a massive presence on a day like this. And we're playing with the ring road. I don't know how much we're going to see of Tomares today, but we will see an awful lot of the ring road. And all of these roundabouts, there weren't that many on continental Europe 20 years ago and more. Now they bedevil every single approach, it seems, and we have so many of them all crammed into this finale. Let's talk about it. The real business end of the day comes with around about 5 kilometres to go. There is climbing, rises and falls before then, but 5Ks to go. You're going to be racing to the foot of a peak that really starts to get very, very nasty. It kind of distills itself into a whole world of pain. 600 metres at 8.3%, which really starts at about 3 kilometres out. The problem is you're also on this ring road with the approaches. You've got rises and falls. You've also got these roundabouts, of which I think there's about 20 in total from now until the line. So you're going to get through all of those. They may have a funneling effect, which bizarrely might make life a bit safer, because quite often if we have a wide open highway approach, then there's just too many options and people get into each other. However, the final kilometre has 2 roundabouts, one with 660 metres to go and one with 320 metres to go, and we're still climbing within that period as well. So it's going to be nasty. I don't know whether they're going to funnel us round one side. I understand it is the right-hand side of the road that they will be taken round. They'll cordon the rest. But if there are options, and sometimes there are, and riders are given to taking them anyway, it can be a bit of a nightmare. Here is, I won't be surprised if this is Carlos Canal, who's just decided to push off from Euskaltel-Euskadi. They say it's, well, there you are, it's Azamendi. I took a punt. But if it is Azamendi, Carlos Canal is possibly their best hope for today. I'm not quite sure how much aero assist Azamendi, very diminutive character, is going to be able to offer up. But this is the first roll of the dice, and some of these riders will know the terrain. They'll certainly potentially have local knowledge as well. Nobody has been tempted to engage the chase. Well, we said there may be a possibility of a steal here, Sean. Are we witnessing one?
No, not at all. I think there's nobody concerned about Azamendi out here. They're just going to leave him dangle out there in front, and 12.6 kilometres to go. You know, with this sort of a final, there is still going to be a very big group as we go into the finish. And, you know, for a sole rider here, I think he's going maybe for the Combat Award here. He might be given it as it being suspect, given to riders who maybe we do not think should get it. But no, I think this is just a move here to get out in front, and yeah, he'll be able to say to his family tonight, did you see me there? I was out in the front in the final of the stage today.
Quick, take the photograph. 12.3 kilometres to go, still on the ring road. Robbie, what fears do you have?
I don't have any fears sitting right here, because I know I'm going to stay with the front of the race. I'm going to know what's going on, despite how steep this climb gets towards the top. You can see it's been very gradual, the lead in, but the upper part of this climb, it goes up through 9, 10, 11%, and I think the steepest little kicker is up to 12%. So that's what makes a climb a lot harder, not its average gradient, but where the steep pieces are. And on this occasion, you've already got the lower slopes in the legs when you hit the really steep part towards the top, and that's where the damage can be done. On top of that, they don't go over the top and straight down. They stay on top for around 2.5 kilometres before they get the real descent. So if you're already tailed off, it's going to be extremely hard to work your way back on, and in fact you'll probably get distance even more across the top as the peloton regroups, then hits the descent. So if you're off on this uphill, I don't see anyone getting back.
Doing a job at the moment is Jay Vine, as you can see, just as you look at it on the right hand side of your picture, just by the barriers, working for, I think, Gianni Vermeersch today, but possibly Rod Stannard as well. There is on the opposite side of the road, you can see the green jersey just coming up to this crest. They really did attack that, but they're all staying together for the time being. Dan McClay still very much instilled. So is Clément Rousseau for Arkea Samsic in the yellow. Carlos Canal was hovering at the back there, by the way, for Euskaltel Euskadi, but looks safe for the time being. Gianfranco Galvão will be Kern Farmer's man for today. Ezekera for Burgos. He'll take a step forward, or hope to do so. You know about Ackermann, of course, but Juan Ayuso will be backup man, but I think Ackermann has got to be the choice, as is Mads Pedersen, default for Trek Segafredo. John Degenkolb, how will he take it? We've seen ramps in the past, but it was in the distant past. Neuhaus perhaps for Team DSM. Caden Groves, will he, won't he? Don't know. For Bike Exchange, you'd certainly like to, and we'd like to see him have a go. Alejandro Valverde or JJ Rojas, not sure whether they've got the legs in this kind of company. Daryl Impey certainly for Israel Premier Tech, or Pat Bevan maybe. Cedric Bullens will be Lotte Sedal's man. Ben Turner, you can see him being guided up at the moment by Luke Plapp as they work that side of the road. Staying safe is Quickstep Alpha Vinyl for the red jersey, but Ineos Grenadiers never that far away. Quentin Pacher, we haven't mentioned him, so I'm going to, because Groupama France Desigueur, every time we've had a ramp, he's been there, and he will be the man today if Fabi Leinhardt, the Swiss, and Miles Scottson can give him a guide. Quentin Pacher is the guy who can sometimes help himself late on. EF Education, as we get a squeeze here with Van den Berg. Brian Coquard, you know about for Cofidis. Why not Higuita? He might have an option, so might Wilco Kelderman, but it would have to be long. It'd have to be about now. Danny Van Poppel will be their man, and I think he's going to have a good chance. Likewise, Fred Wright for Bahrain Victorious. Batistella for Astana, Kazakhstan. Not sure who's going to be in the mix for AG2R Citroën, but they occasionally do, and sometimes Bob Jungels has a big old dig, but I think it was Prudhomme last time, bizarrely. Roglic himself or Turnison for Jumbo-Visma. Lots of roundabouts, lots of choice, and indeed potentially lots of options as this cranks up, and it is cranking up, Robbie.
It is cranking up, and this is where it's really important to choose the correct side of these roundabouts. There's so often a short side and a long side, and you can lose crucial positions. This is where teams send people ahead of the race. The soigneurs will often record it, make notes, and give that through like a rally car navigator to tell them which side of the roundabouts to stay on. They're on top of this plateau at the moment. They're only a matter of a few hundred metres from diving down this descent, which brings them right into the finale. And the bunch looks fairly intact. They didn't smash it over that last climb. So I'd say pretty much all of the sprinters are still in the peloton.
Wow, it's going to be a pacey approach then. From now on in, there's a real drive for that flat section, which we're just approaching. So they'll come on a downhill run, which explains the extra impetus that we've got. Gravity helping here as we come to another roundabout with two options. And clearly, if you take the shorter route through, you can make a big advance here.
That left side was the best, obviously. There you saw the huge difference. So if you're on the right, you've just lost yourself about 25 positions.
Yeah, better get that right every single time. And Sean, the best prepared teams are wise to which side to go if there is an option.
Yes, that is certainly the case if you have the information all the time as you go through those roundabouts, and also if you're very much on the front here, in the top 20 places, you can just have a look up and see the roundabout, and you can work it out for yourself pretty much what is the best way to go around. But the way they're going at the moment, if you're in that top 30 places, it's not going to be a disaster if you take the longer way around. It's really when it's going full-on racing, that is when it's vitally important you get the shortest line through the roundabouts. And on that climb,
punch of a Caden Groves.
Oh, this is a bad one.
Nightmare. Exactly at precisely the wrong time. No Caden Groves in the end. You can be absolutely certain of that. Look how busy Bahrain Victorious are with the golden helmets, and just in front of them, Bora Hansgrohe in their petrol green. They mean business. Danny Van Poppel wants a piece of the day, and a Don't be surprised if indeed he takes the whole cake. Let's see, 7.2 kilometres from home, and they really are starting to mix it here. This is fantastic. Jay Vine's been doing a fantastic guiding job here for Gianni Vermeersch. I can't see the tricolour, so I think it is Gianni. Let's have a look. Caden Groves, puncture, nightmare, Robbie.
Yeah, Caden Groves, this is the worst possible timing inside the last 10 kilometres. So that is the day done for Caden Groves and the Bike Exchange Jayco team, unfortunately. And the race, it waits for no man. It pushes on at the front. And I did see Tim Merlier at one stage. His team were on the left. He was on the right, but very close to the front. So he'll be in close contact with them fairly shortly, I'd say. So Merlier in a good position. I see Rodriguez trying to push up onto the wheel of his teammates and getting in amongst some of the sprinters there. I think it's Chimolai there in front of him, who you'd expect to be just putting Coquard in the right place, but they don't often seem to ride together very cohesively.
Kirsch doing a fantastic job for Mads Pedersen. You can also see Plapp also on a guiding role at the moment. It is Clément Rousseau a few moments ago who was in exactly the right place, still remains in that position. Not sure it's going to be him or Dan McClay today. And here comes a train of Jumbo-Visma riders. Primož Roglič will fancy this. You can be absolutely certain he doesn't mind a skirmish. And here he comes. Now then, there may well be some gaps here. We might find a few seconds. That would be fabulous today if that's the way it worked out. Zambanini just coming up, cruises up onto the shoulder of it looks like Gino Mader actually, but Fred Wright will be involved a little bit later on, you can be certain. So will Coquard, who's got no teammates around him. He's just following Mads Pedersen at the moment. That's a very good rider to latch on to. Meanwhile, Alpecin de Koenig still work. I think this must be for Rob Stannard. Can't see the tricolour of Merlier anywhere at all. There he is. He is indeed just disengaged from his teammates. Needs to learn to ride with them, almost against them on the other side of the road, strangely enough. I've seen him guiding in a few others. That's not the way to do it. John Degenkolb also being brought up here by Neuhaus. Can't see him just for the time being. He's being screened, but in fact he's yes, he is dead centre of the road right now. Decides to go for other options. He's tracing Trek as we speak with Axel Kirsch. There is McClay being brought up by Clément Rousseau in the bright yellow on the left-hand side of the road. They're wrestling each other at the moment. UAE also want to join the party. Pascal Ackermann fancies it today. He's got Milano to guide him and Oliveira. Big pickup in the pace. Now we are about to hit the climb. Before you know it, we just hit a gentle ramp, and then suddenly, wham! It really kicks in. And there's a few others as well that really want to dig for the day. Interesting as well to see that Valverde and JJ Rojas are involved. Pedersen makes a move out of the saddle, just drags himself a couple of places up. Coquard staying very much with him, and Fred Wright comes to join the party just on the barriers, as you can see. Carlos Canal and Gotson Martin for Euskadi are also there in the bright orange. 3.9 kilometres to go. It is just about now that they're starting to think about this climb and the approach to it, Robbie.
Yeah, about 3.6 kilometres to go. The final climb kicks up. It's up in two steps. The first one, the steepest and the longest of the two sections. It's Alpecin de Koenig on the front. This is a big turn by that rider, but he had none of his teammates on the wheel. He came to the front and split it. It's UAE lined up behind him, and they've got Ackermann in a very good position.
It's Vermeersch that's on the front at the moment for De Koenig Quickstep. Tim Merlier can't even see him on this string of 10. You can see it as well, though, that Ben Turner is involved here, but it is UAE Team Emirates for Pascal Ackermann. If he got his timing wrong last time, Sean, he can give it a good go this time. Let's see how he goes on the first climbing test, shall we?
Yes, well, it's a place to be if you have a number of teammates in front of you. Just sit there and follow and wait. And as we go now to the 3.1 to go, anybody here in the top 15 or 20 are still in a good place. And depending on who's in front of you, if you have teammates in front of you, if you have another sprinter in front of you with teammates guiding him through, you know, you're okay for the moment. And it's not really going full on at the moment. Everybody is trying to keep their position, and the teams are just setting up their sprinters here, and this is a relatively easier run in, but we're getting to the real, meaty part of it
Here
now with 3Ks to go.
Yeah, big pickup right now, as you can see. Roglic does not want to mess around, and I think he may well be having a dig from distance. Mike Turnison has also been imposed here, and it's gone bang. Oh, it's popped absolutely everybody. This is fantastic. Ackerman's called to duty as well, but Primož Roglic wants to make a statement today, and it's a big one. There's a gap opening up behind, and there, filling it at the moment, is Mads Pedersen. Oh, but Roglic is finding time. This is fantastic. He'll take him wherever he possibly can. Ackerman trying to stay with, just can't quite do it for the time being. They will level off here, and this could be the most exceptional lead-in for Pascal Ackerman by Primož Roglic. Roglic wants time. Bonus seconds, he'll take them if he possibly can. And there you can see, trying to put a fire out is Mads Pedersen. He is in arrears at the moment by possibly 15-20 bike ranks. That's Danny Van Poppel on his wheel, and Fred Wright. And oh, this is huge! 2.2 kilometres. This is a technical, not a crash. So if everyone stays on their bikes, Evenepoel is going to chip a hat full of time here. What drama! News will have got through to Roglic as well. You can be certain of that. He's already started the attack. No shame in this. Fred Wright's getting back into this one as well, latching on to 5th place. Fabulous finale here, and Evenepoel, wounded by the clock, you might say. Doesn't want to panic, wants to keep it sensible. Meanwhile, out front, it's shredding here, Robbie. What a moment.
Well, Roglic goes, and then it all goes bad for Remco Evenepoel. And the question is, are they going to call this an uphill finish, or does the 3K rule come into effect? There'll be some very nervous people.
The 3K rule counts, Robbie.
Yeah, it should be the 3K rule. It's not a mountain finish, and that's why there's no panic from Evenepoel. But it's just maybe a sign of what's to come in the rest of the week. But Roglic, he drives on with it. Pedersen is now there. Ackerman, what an incredible performance to follow Roglic. Fred Wright come up on the wheel. Danny Van Poppel is also there. So plenty of fast men. And Roglic, well, surely he's just going to keep pushing this onto the finish and try not to let anyone come back. He won't know exactly what the situation is behind. He just wants to be off the front and gain some time.
Well, this is what it's all about, and every margin will count. 1,100 metres to go. What a flotilla here of talent we have got. It's going to be from these 5. Roglic on the front, then just behind him the green jersey of Pedersen. Then we have Ackerman on the ramp. He's got to be confident. Danny Van Poppel, possibly the quickest of all of them, but can he cope with the incline? Fred Wright as well is here, and just keeping his powder really nice and dry on the back. 750 metres to go. Roglic continues to stamp on the pedals. 600, just over 600 metres to go, and it looks like between Rog and Ped at the moment, and pedalling behind them will be Ackerman. Oh, you can hear the camera bike here as well, just bumping and grinding on some of the traffic calming devices, and Roglic picks it up and starts to just come through the heat haze here, but you feel that Mads Pedersen has got what it takes. Look at the gaps that are opening up here. There will be some by the line. So after 4 hours and 45 minutes, it's a sprint finish with 5 fabulously talented riders who can take a ramp and maybe impose themselves. Here we go. Doesn't quite open up just yet. The last roundabouts have to be taken, and then finally they'll get a sight to the line. It's Mads Pedersen, of course. Roglic has done a tremendous job, and look at the retrieval. Oh, and down goes Roglic at the very last touch of wheels. Pedersen takes it ahead of Ackerman. Then comes Danny Van Poppel, and then comes Fred Wright, and it is Roglic that remounts and will bring this in. That's Pashier, I believe, that throws the bike to the line this time by. We have had it all today. Oh, a bagatelle of misery for so many. Goodness me, you roll the dice, you take your chance, and sometimes it does not work. Battered, bruised, brave. Oh, take your pick. Today's had it all, this finale. Robbie, what about that?
That is just mind-blowing. I mean, the attack was incredible. Evenepoel having a problem. Yes, he can fall back on the 3 kilometre rule, but Roglic already had a gap, and Evenepoel will be put back with that main peloton on time, most certainly. But then Roglic, how does he manage to fall off 150 metres from the line? And he looks groggy. He does not look well at all.
Absolute nightmare. Every time that man grabs something, it seems like it's dry sand through his fingers. More bad luck for this man, Sean, after what looked like a spectacular moment. It just fell away from him. He's not well, Sean.
No, he's after taking a pretty heavy tumble there, and you can see it's knocked him a bit. And yeah, after doing such a great performance, opening up and blowing the peloton apart there and pulling, a number of riders away. And yeah, he, unluckily for him and luckily for Evenepoel, that it was at that point he had his mechanical problem, because the gap was a very small one from the time Roglic attacked. So there'll be only a handful of seconds, but you can see there, yeah, he's after taking a heavy fall. And yeah, you ask yourself, how did he manage it there with that group of riders? Yeah, it just goes on for Primož Roglic. These crashes, they continue on and not having the look at all.
My goodness. Well, there is so much to ponder here, and that looks really, really nasty. There's an open gash there. The camera's not dwelling upon it, but that does not look kind.
That most certainly does not look good. And the way Primož took his helmet off and threw it and looked down, and it looks like the blood's actually coming from his arm, not from his leg. You just see he inspected his own elbow, and he fell so heavily. And I'm sure in a moment we'll get the helicopter shot and we'll see what's happened. But it looks like he may have just tangled with one of the other riders in that group, either Danny van Poppel or maybe with Fred Wright, and come undone. Maybe just got hit in the handlebars and it tips you straight off. So we'll just wait and see what's happened to him. But the guy just has no luck. I mean, he has so many accidents. I mean, people ask questions. Is it because he's come from another sport and doesn't have that experience that you build as a young rider with all these skills, or is it purely bad luck, just wrong place, wrong time? And he must be just sitting there thinking to himself, how does this keep happening?
Oh, well, if he didn't have bad luck, he'd have no luck at all.
I think you have enough power.
This is going to take a lot of untangling, Sean.
Yes, well, he is, after taking a heavy fall, we could see the elbow there. It looks like he has a good gash. And yeah, when you're with riders like this in the sprint, of course, the sprinters, they just go through gaps, or they move the bike a lot. Maybe when they kick their sprint, it'll be interesting to see how exactly Roglic did fall there, but he's certainly after taking a very heavy tumble. And yeah, this is going to be another, real for the morale. It's going to hit it big time.
Not a feature of this top 10, Primož Roglic, I'm afraid. Mats Pedersen took the day ahead of Pascal Ackermann, Danny van Poppel and Fred Wright. Quentin Pacher led home the pack.
Bike racing, we just could not make it up, could you? Fred Wright with a top 5 finish once again, but all the drama happening elsewhere. Mats Pedersen, of course, with a stage win again, but we need to start issuing a health warning to those of a nervous disposition. That was incredibly difficult to watch. Where do we start, Dan? We've got to start with Roglic, really, don't we?
We do, yeah. I mean, what a rollercoaster ride for us, let alone for Primož Roglic himself. I mean, so much happened in those last few kilometres. It's going to be almost impossible to pick apart in the next 20-25 minutes. I haven't really seen exactly what happened towards the end, but obviously Roglic, his only ambition really was to take a time gap on the rest of the peloton behind. He comes back in at this point, and we don't quite see exactly what happens from the overhead shot, but it looked from what we did see like just an overlap of wheels as he tried to come back into the slipstream, and all of a sudden he's on the deck. It happens in a split second like that. As soon as you touch wheels and your momentum's going the wrong way, you're going to be on the deck. But I mean, let's hope he's all right. We went from the point where like, this is prime Primož Roglic, like how good is this for the race, to all of a sudden thinking, let's hope he's still in the race after this.
Tell you what, it's a stage finish to be on your feet. The fact that the race was coming to life in such a dramatic way, and then your heart is in your stomach. Adam, who do you, it doesn't really matter, I guess, but who do you think he clipped wheels with there?
I don't think it was wheels. I think he just clipped handlebars with Fred Wright there, and it was just when you sprint and you're moving your bike a lot, and Primus was trying to get in the wheel of Danny Van Poppel. Fred Wright obviously didn't mean to hit him. Primus didn't mean to hit Fred as well, and it's just a clash there, and sadly Primus got the brunt of it. But there's not a lot you can say about the situation. We just try to get a close-up of it here. You can see Fred just trying to hang on to Danny's wheel. Primus is trying to move in. And I think we
missed it again.
I think at this point here, you can just see Fred bounce to the left there. And that's when Primus went down. It was just so quick for him. Fred solid on his bike and Primus just not that solid, yes, but just as soon as that clip came wrong at the wrong angle, and he just sadly just hit the deck.
I think what you can say there is that Fred Wright didn't change his line. It wasn't as though he suddenly diverted to his own left and that it might have been his fault. You know, Roglic just wanted to get back into the slipstream to make sure he stayed on the same time as that group. And at that point...
This is the point here. Oh, no, this is still not it.
Okay.
He seems to be down already by this stage.
I think what you've got to remember here at this point is that I'd say he's even deeper into the red on that type of effort than he would be at the top of Sierra Nevada a couple of days ago, because it's a purely anaerobic effort that he did from about 2 kilometres out. I'm guessing that would have been in the region of 4 minutes, absolutely flat out, where he wasn't even seeing clearly, let alone perhaps thinking clearly by that point. So these things can happen, but it's an awful thing for the race.
You've got to imagine that he was so deeply in the red, Adam, that he didn't really have his usual sense of perspective, because really, if you're looking at Primož Roglic going for bonus seconds and time gaps to the line, he could have stayed in his lane, essentially. He didn't need to be with the pack. He didn't need to slipstream, really.
No, it doesn't need to, but you always want to. In that situation, he knew he was going to get overtaken. He let it out from 2K to not let it out attacked, and then didn't ask for a turn. No one came past him. So when he eventually got overtaken by Pedersen, it's natural for a lot of bike riders just to try and get back in the wheel so you can slipstream. He wants to finish on the same time as Pedersen did, so he's just trying to get as close to the line as he can with the best advantage he can, and that was on the wheel. Him and Fred just came together, and I can only imagine it was the time where you're pulling up the one side and it just bangs straight down.
And he just would have wanted to finish, you know, after all that hard work that he'd done to gap everybody behind him, the last thing he would have wanted to happen is that in the last 100 metres, he's gapped by that group with Pedersen and he's lost 1 or 2 seconds out of all of the hard work that he's done. So it's natural to want to get back into the slipstream. I mean, it's very hard to see from the angles that we've got there, and I don't think we'll have any more to see exactly what happened in that instant. But, like I said, it's just awful for the race, and let's hope well, it looks like he is hurt, let's be honest.
He's hurt. Let's just hope that he can recover okay. And we're trying to work out as well whether or not this is a stage where the 3-kilometre rule is in effect. That's, of course, when we have a sprint finish, a bunch sprint finish, and if there's a mechanical or a crash in the final 3 kilometres, the rider who is disadvantaged by that has the same time as the group that they were on. At the minute, Primož Roglic has not been given the same time as Mads Pedersen. Dan, you think that might be corrected? We'll try to work that out, and we'll try to find out whether that will apply to Remco Evenepoel as well, because we haven't even had time to get to his puncture yet. But let's try to find out a little bit more about what exactly happened in that crash from one of the men who certainly was able to, we hope at least, see it quite closely, Fred Wright.
Fred, that was a very intense finale with a bit of drama, seeing Primož Roglic crashing. How did you leave it from inside?
Say that, what was the last bit, sorry?
How was it for you, this final?
I think harder than expected on that kicker. Like, I'd watched back a few years ago the stage and kind of thought, okay, it's going to stay together, a sprint team's going to control, Mads' team's going to control, or UE or Bora or whatever, but when Primož wants to do something like that, he's unstoppable, man, and that was so impressive, and I was on my knees just trying to follow. But I made it, look back and was like, okay, 5 of us here, I'm just going to pretend like they can't, like I'm not here, you know. I don't think they realised I was there, but in the end, when I tried to sprint, I wouldn't have had it, you know. I got blocked a bit by Primož, and I think that's what caused the crash. Like, I don't know. I think it was just a racing incident. I'm not sure. Like, I was coming out and around, and he was coming backwards, and I kind of like, I was just, nothing was deliberate, obviously. So I hope he's all right. But yeah, I don't think I had the legs to beat Mads again anyway. So it's 4th again, but it's all right.
But one more day in the mix. I mean, you are one of the names of this Vuelta a España.
Yeah, it's nice that, you know. It's such a good feeling, you know, when you do such a hard effort like that, and you look back and you're like, wow, there's no one left. There's just 5 guys here, and I'm one of them, you know. It's pretty cool that, man, that last K took forever. Primož was, even on the flat parts, he was smashing it, and I was thinking, oh, can I hold this wheel? So yeah, fair play, and I hope he's all right. Cheers.
Yeah, we all hope he's all right for Primoz Roglic's sake and, of course, for the sake of the race. And I guess, Dan, this is the difficulty. If you have a GC rider in the pointy end of a fast finish, these are the dangers that they face compared to if they're trying to stay safe.
In some ways, yes, if it's a bunch sprint, for example, or an uphill sprint with a big group still. But he was in a small group. I literally just think that he was so out of it with the effort that he'd already made and going into the red, as we were talking about before, that he just wanted to get into the slipstream, wasn't fully aware of who was still coming past him. So it looks like just a clip of elbows as they went past each other, that 99 times out of 100, both of them would have stayed upright with, but just the way in which it happened, suddenly Primoz Roglic was on the deck. And from what I've just been trying to read whilst listening to his interview, it does look like the 3-kilometre rule applies. Okay. When you look in the Vuelta road book, it's not one of the stages that is deemed as a mass bunch sprint. The difference between the mass bunch sprints and those that are non-classified like that is that with the bunch sprints, there's a 3-second rule applies. So there needs to be more than 3 seconds between 2 consecutive riders for a gap to be given between those riders within the bunch. If it's not classified like that, it only needs a 1-second gap, and then you are given the time for the next person across the line. But it looks, from what I've seen, like the 3-kilometre rule does apply, which should mean that Roglic is given the same time as the group that he was in when he crashed, and that Evenepoel is given the same time as the group that he was in when he had his mechanical issue, whatever that was.
Yeah, and we would have to see what that time gap was then, because as it was, Remco Evenepoel came in some 3 minutes and 10 seconds down on Mads Pedersen. But if he's given the time that he would have had with the group when he had his mechanical, then that changes everything again. Woo, what a sport.
I really want to see that bike of Remco's to see what the problem was. When he stopped at the side of the road, he's not crashed. That's obvious because he's not, you can tell. The number 2 is both wheels to me look like they were pumped up, so it's not a puncture. If his gears have gone into his spokes and derailleur and can't pedal, yes, it's a mechanical, but that's something that you can help. It's not a mechanical which is like, oh my God, sort of thing. I would like to go and see that bike to see what the problem was.
OK, Adam, can I push you on that then?
Yeah, go
why would you like to see exactly what was wrong? Are you suspecting that Primoz Roglic had gone on the attack? It was clear he was going to get, if things had panned out the way we all expected them to pan out and Primoz Roglic stayed on his bike, he was going to get significant time on Remco Evenepoel. Are you suggesting that maybe he thought, here's how to limit my losses, I can claim a mechanical?
I'm not suggesting that, and I'm not saying it's because of Primoz whatsoever. It's just all a little bit too convenient. Right at the bottom of that climb, and as we never saw him up towards the front. He's not up towards the front. Here you can see both wheels are pumped up. He's pedalling along on the bike fine. So what is the problem with it? He can pedal on the bike. I don't understand what that problem might be. His handlebars are straight. He's not hit the deck. So I would like to know what I'm not sure what he would have gained from that anyway, because
limiting time losses.
Well, it's the 3K rule.
Yes, but he's still going to be given the time of the group that he was in at that point. I mean, he'd be more than capable of keeping up with the group he was in.
The other
if
way
Roglic finishes in front of him, then he's still going to have a separate gap to him anyway.
The other side of it is, if he knew there was a gap, which he might have heard that Roglic was attacking, he's not had to do a 4-minute effort at absolute maximum capacity. So he's just cruised in, chilled across the line. I'm not suggesting, I'm sure that there is a reason for it and whatever he stopped for, but when you see those shots there, he's still pedalling on his bike. There's not 2 punctures. He's able to keep the bike moving. So you have to justify what is actually the reason you've stopped for it. If it's a mechanical, you're still pedalling your bike. I don't understand how you can still pedal it.
Better get some security for Adam tonight.
No, but it's just the Belgian media and fans. Should we see if the man himself has any explanation? I think we've got an interview from him. Let's see if we can learn anything from Remco Evenepoel.
Oh, a very eventful finale. What happened to you?
Yeah, a puncture on my rear wheel. I wasn't in the best position because, I knew we did a recon of the final yesterday and we felt the roads were really slippery, so I was a little bit scared, to be honest, in the last 4 or 5K. So I lost some positions and then I wanted to move up on the steep bump. But my rear wheel just went off, so I felt I had a flat tire and I'm happy that the 3-kilometer rule exists, otherwise I would have lost a lot of time today. And then I heard that Primoz crashed, so I really hope he's okay and that he can continue the race.
Did you expect him to attack with 2.5K to go?
Yeah, actually, yes. I mean, we all know that Primoz is really explosive, so a final like this is really made for him. So yeah, that makes it even yeah, I would say it's even more a pity for him that he crashed. You never want somebody to crash, so I hope he's okay.
It's the first time for you to do the third week of a race. How did you feel today?
Yeah, I felt recovered. I really needed the rest day, I think, because of my crash as well. I really had some soreness in my muscle, so the rest day was really welcome. So I felt much better today than I did on Saturday and even on Sunday. So it looks pretty good for the next of the week.
Thank you very much.
Classy words and actions, it has to be said, from Remco Evenepoel, who immediately went over to check on Primoz Roglic when he crossed the line. However, he has now said, Adam, that it was a rear wheel puncture. You think that wasn't the case, though?
Well, if we look back on the shots, there doesn't seem... Normally in the puncture, you can see both the tyres. I'm sure if we can pause it, that tyre to me looks identical. Look, it's not on the rim.
If there's a way we could maybe pause that. I'm not sure if we can.
It's when the sun's on it, so we've got a clear picture of it. But if you rewind a little bit, you can see compared to the front wheel, it's not down on the rim. If you can see here, look, it's not down on the rim there. So it's, to me, you've got a puncture, but normally when you get a puncture on tubeless, it'll pump. You'll hold a bit of air in it because of the fluid that's in it, so it won't go completely flat. But at the same time, you can just see there, to me, that doesn't look flat.
Dan, give us your opinion.
No, I would agree. It doesn't look flat, and more importantly, it didn't look flat when he was sat on it with his weight on the rear wheel. So, I mean, it's a really difficult one to comment on because you don't want to say that somebody's a liar, but just based on what we can see right there, it doesn't look particularly flat. What might give us more of an idea is when you get the still photos later, if there's any still camera people still there, that might be unlikely because they all go to the finish line, but you can then zoom in and see exactly what was what.
By the way, I'm not stating Remco wanted to say, I know this is going to happen, he's cheating, but it's just those shots there, when you see that, it's that little bit of... for me, I just couldn't understand what was wrong.
Could it be, and I'm asking this completely innocently, could it be that he felt like there was a rear wheel puncture when there wasn't? Could that be a possibility?
Yeah, but that's bad legs. That's bad legs. Everyone used to do it. You'd ride along in a peloton sometimes and do this and look down, you'd be like, nope, I'm just feeling awful.
Well, I'm quite sure if we are asking these questions, we're not the only ones, so maybe someone at the finish line will go to the team and ask them to see the bike. Who knows? But let's have a little look, shall we, at the general classification after a finale of absolute drama, because now we have Primoz Roglic in the race lead, but seriously, well, not seriously injured, but certainly damaged. 35 seconds over Enric Mas. Remco Evenepoel is now 1:36, so they've essentially swapped their time deficit. Juan Ayuso is now closer to the top than he was this morning. He's 3:23. Same with Carlos Rodriguez and Miguel Angel Lopez. So we now have 6 riders within 4 minutes of the lead. Then we get to Almeida, Aronsman, Ben O'Connor and Jai Hindley. They've all made up a little bit of time. So now we have everything turned on its head, but we have no idea what kind of a state our race leader is in.
No, but I'm gobsmacked.
Yeah,
that obviously wasn't a 3-kilometre rule based on that graphic. If Evenepoel switched places with Primoz Roglic, he was given the time that he crossed the line with. So that completely changes the entire race, because even if Primoz Roglic is really injured and can't carry on with the race, Enric Mas is then the new virtual leader, or the new actual leader of this race. It's one of these things, when we're doing the breakaway here, we obviously can't keep our eye on social media and the explanations and a lot of the other things that are going on that other people are able to look at. But with that graphic, it suggests that currently they're saying that the 3-kilometre rule wasn't there, which would make sense because they didn't deem today's stage as being a big bunch sprint. If that is the case, Quick-Step have made a humongous mistake there by not saying to Remco Evenepoel, this is not a mass sprint stage. You've got to get there as quick to the line as you possibly can.
That's the whole thing, back to the puncture. If you've got a puncture, regardless of the 3K rule, in that situation, just keep riding on it. And that's what I'm saying. It didn't look flat, but he can still ride his bike. If it's still rideable, ride it until it's on the rim in that last 3K. It doesn't matter if it's in the last 3K or not. Just keep going till it's on the rim and then change your bike.
Yeah, because these things are quite clear as well, aren't they? They're in the road book. You know at the start of the day whether the 3-kilometre rule is in place or not. Let's, however, give some credit, shall we, to Mads Pedersen, who survived all of that out front and did exactly what the bookies had him down to do at the start of the day, taking the stage win once again, Adam.
He took the stage win by ease as well. I mean, he had the perfect lead out from Roglic. He got onto his wheel. Ackermann and him swapped place at the top of the line. Ackermann, by the way, super ride from him to follow Roglic. But Pedersen here, look, as soon as he comes out the corner, it's just a case of Roglic almost swung off. Here we see the awful clash of Roglic coming up. But you can see there from Mads behind, no one was able to get on terms. No one was able to even approach the wheel, never mind use the slipstream to get onto it. He's just in a class of his own.
That was absolutely fantastic from the green jersey. And we can hear from the man himself now. Let's get a reaction from Mads Pedersen.
You wanted a second stage win. Is it the way you wanted to win?
Yeah, really, like everyone was working really hard today, and I promised Kiers to win today. He got a daughter yesterday and he wasn't there for the birth, so the whole team worked really hard to give him this second present in a few days. So this win is for Alex and his wife and his new kid.
Did you expect Roglic to attack with 2.5k to go?
No, not really actually, but it was a really smart move. Everyone was really on the limit, and Ackermann was straight in his wheel, really good job, and I had to use a lot of energy to close him, but it was a really good move.
Did you hear him crashing behind you?
I didn't hear it. I wanted to go to him here, and I saw he was, with destroyed clothing. So it's a pity that he crashed. He hasn't been lucky this year, and I hope it's not too bad, so he can keep contending for the victory of the Vuelta.
Thank you.
Congratulations to Mads Pedersen, but echoing everyone's sentiments, really. We all hope that Primož Roglic is going to be okay. We will, of course, bring you any medical updates that we get while we're still on air, but it looks like the kind of thing that we're going to have to wait a few hours, I would say, before he's properly assessed. And also, we will not know which of his injuries from the Tour de France have been aggravated by this fall, Dan, and they're going to have to do a pretty serious, thorough going over with Primož Roglic this evening, you would imagine.
Yeah. He'll know himself, I think, very quickly whether or not he's really broken a bone, obviously. But like you said, the aggravation of the previous injuries that he's already been through this season, we don't know about that yet, and he might not do either. There's also the amount of blood loss. It looked like he'd lost a fairly significant amount of blood from the pictures that we were getting from the finish line and then later on. So it's... we keep saying Roglic is a fighter, but also everyone has to look after his well-being as much as he has to look after his well-being himself. So... it'll obviously be sad for him to leave the race, but completely justifiable based on what we've seen so far.
I definitely think that he's not too bad. He was able to jump up quite quickly. The adrenaline comes. He's able to get onto the bike and roll it. Yes, he rolled across super slowly, but he rolled across the line and then he went and sat down. He's not the kind of person that screams in pain anyway, but he was sat there very calmly and he wasn't looking, he held his arm up, looked around. So hopefully the worst scenario is it is just road rash and nothing else. Yeah,
and whether he can spend the next few days recovering on the bike, essentially. Let's relive through the last 2.7, I think, kilometres it was in the end. It's difficult to ask this question now that we know what happened next, but was this worth it? Was the gamble worth it, Dan?
I think it totally would have been, if only for the psychological blow as much as anything. But, what a performance.
Oh, I was screaming at the TV with this. It was wonderful.
It was incredible, yeah. So I think we've got Ivo Oliveira there just trying to get on. And it's Pascal Ackermann who was the first man to bridge across. And Mads Pedersen had to come from a long way back. But even Roglic himself, when you saw that overhead shot, he had to come from a long way back before he even got to the front of the bunch to be able to then gap everybody else. And this is not a super steep finish. It's not the Rampus Inhumanus that we keep talking about at the Tour of Spain. He then had to plough on some flatter roads and a drag towards the line. Everybody would have known that he might try something like that today. We were talking about this before the start of the stage, and yet the reason he was able to get away was through sheer brute strength and power and willpower today. And so it's such a shame to then see him make those gains and then cross the line with so much blood pouring out of his elbow.
I think one thing to just try and look at, then he keeps looking down at his arm, he's holding his chest, but he was doing this, and when we talked about him being in the red quite a lot, he was sort of shaking his head, not in a way that's like, I can't believe that's happened, but in a little bit of a daze. So I just hope that he's I know it sounds awful. I hope it is just road rash and a couple of cuts and bruises, which will obviously be a lot of pain for him, but I just hope he's not banged his head or anything's broken. I just hope that he can carry on.
Yeah, it was strange that there was no doctor or any from the medical department, either from the race or the team, immediately there to assist him afterwards. He seemed to be there for quite some time, just with the team's press officer, I guess, desperately on the phone there trying to get someone to give him some attention.
Yeah, we were surprised by the fact there wasn't any medical assistance there straight away, and this is what we were referring to a moment ago, Remco, just checking on his welfare and making sure that he's OK. We will check on the general classification, because even though we have brought you the top 10 as it was given to us, obviously these things can be revised, so we'll keep an eye on that over the next couple of moments. But viewers on digital, you will stay with us for a bit of chat from elsewhere in the world of cycling. Viewers on Eurosport, you'll be back to look ahead to stage 17 in just a moment. Well, as we all catch our breaths from a dramatic finale at the Vuelta a Espana, we have news as well from the Tour of Britain. And the day started, Dan, with news that St Piran, the British-based team, have taken their riders, we understand, off their bikes because of health, because of safety concerns.
It didn't go too in-depth, the article on Cycling Weekly, but what was obvious was that Alex Richardson, in the breakaway today, was not using a Lapierre bike, which is what their sponsor was. So instead, he was using a Specialized S-Works. And it's quite a strange one, because Lapierre is a manufacturer that's used by one of the top flight teams in the World Tour, Groupama FDJ. So if there's any weaknesses or any safety concerns, they definitely would have been highlighted by that World Tour team, because those riders would have been putting them through their paces for many months on end now. So it's a really... it's an interesting one, and I'm not sure if there's more to it than what was initially posted in that article and what St Piran's manager has said about the situation. Because years and years ago, right, there was a huge disparity between the top level of bikes and the peloton. So there'd be a lot of riders, if they were a team leader, who would actually have a bike from a different manufacturer, and it was just painted with the sponsor's manufacturer on it. It was a very common occurrence, but in this day and age, pretty much every single sponsor of a World Tour team and the levels below, their bikes are all really good. There might be small disparities between how aerodynamic they are and a couple of other bits and pieces, but in terms of safety, you know, by the time that they're being used by a team in that level of the sport, I find it very difficult to believe there was any problems with them.
I think the distributors as well, they said, can we have the bikes back to check over what it is? And they said something to do with over-tightening the headset maybe, and that's cracking something around the headset. But they refused to go, and Lapierre St Piran refused to comment after that. So maybe it was a mistake of they've been given the bikes, they've built them up, they'd maybe over-tightened something. This might be a thing, but I think them commenting they're too dangerous to ride, but then not taking the time to reply to someone saying you're not building it right, almost.
Well, that was the rider in black there, Alexander Richardson, was of the team, and he obviously wasn't in a Lapierre bike, so damaged relations there, one way or the other, surely.
It will be, Lapierre will not be sponsoring that team next year. I think you can be pretty sure of that, because of the publicity that's been around this, because however much we explain it, or however much they try and explain it, the damage is kind of done, really.
Can I just say...
it's for safety reasons. No one wants to ride a bike that's unsafe.
Of course.
Being on a British team, but still being able to ride the Tour a bit on another bike, so for those riders, is still brilliant. It's a big opportunity for them.
Yeah, it certainly is. Lapierre had said that the stories were just rumours, but obviously they're not riding the bikes for whatever reason. Well, back to the Vuelta next. We'll be looking ahead to stage 17 and showing you the general classification in just a moment. Welcome back to our viewers on Eurosport, where we are still recovering, quite frankly, from the most dramatic stage finale at the Vuelta a Espana. And here now is the new revised general classification. Remco Evenepoel is indeed still the race leader. Primož Roglic is on 1 minute and 26. Enric Mas at 2:01. So this would suggest Dan is shaking his head here.
Well, it's only cycling, isn't it?
Yeah, I know.
It's only cycling where you'd get a graphic like that, which completely turns the tables on the race. And we're like, oh, only joking, we forgot about the 3K rule. Here it is properly.
But why is the 3K rule in place then if the road book says that it's not? That's what I don't understand either.
Yeah, I couldn't find obviously I didn't have much time between the point where Roglic crashed. I know I should have done my research beforehand. I didn't have enough time to go beyond what said it's not deemed as a mass sprint finish. So I think, like I said before, the difference between the two in that situation is that it had to be a 3-second gap in a mass bunch sprint to be deemed as a gap. On a day like today, it only needs to be 1 second gap between 2 consecutive riders. But it seems as though the 3-kilometre rule still applied, but I still can't find exactly where it says that in the rule book. So pretty unclear on my part, but I need to go away afterwards and find out exactly what the situation is.
Do you know what? All of it is absolutely bonkers, though. It's absolutely bonkers. Whenever you think now that Primoz Roglic did have a race lead of some minute and a half, now all he's done is claw back 8 seconds from Remco Evenepoel. He's gone from being able to consolidate his lead and be conservative and nurse those injuries over the next couple of stages to needing to get back still a minute and a half on the race leader. Completely changes the entire dynamic of the race, Adam, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm just sad for him, you know. I think as well, Jumbo will have to push for complaints within that. If there's not a 3K rule that was stated before the race, even if he's punctured, there's not a 3K rule. And like you said, there's the time gaps and all that kind of stuff. But it just doesn't seem fair to me. It just really doesn't. And cycling's not fair. Life's not fair, obviously. But I just feel so sorry for the bloke that he's put all that effort in, and that is a lot more than what Remco put in. And Remco's just come across, happy days, laughing, I've had a puncture, sorry, yeah, but fine, I'll carry on tomorrow.
It certainly does raise ever more the questions over what exactly happened with his bike and whether or not we'll get to see any pictures or images of that at the end of today. Oh, only in bike racing, eh?
Have I got time to say another thing?
Go quickly.
If he has got a puncture, there should be fluid coming out of it because they're tubeless. And there was no fluid coming out of it either.
And on that note...
Inspector Clouseau Blythe, I like it. It's good that you are on the ball with those questions, Adam, because quite frankly, when it comes to the predictions, it's not been going very well.
No, it's going shocking, hasn't it? I mean, look, they've even got a hat on now. Oh, you look great.
Oh, look at that. You got 0 points, and our producer, Pete, threatened to give Adam this little helicopter cap if he managed to get 0 points in any given day, and you've done it. You won a booby prize, you won a cap, Adam, well done, with a little helicopter.
I don't know what to say, I might just leave, to be honest. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Just demoralising, really,
it is. I mean, what the hell
stage?
was Brian Coquard doing? He sat on the front all day with his team, and then he was nowhere. Nowhere.
Maybe you should read the form guide. Maybe you should just study it a little bit better. Anyway, I'm just glad that I'm not losing right now. 4-9.
You are losing.
I'm not losing against you. It's a different competition now. I think we've all established.
Sorry.
Dan is in a league of his own, quite literally.
Well, speaking of different competitions, I'm one myself right now and I'm winning, so happy days.
Winning in a competition with yourself. I mean, even you couldn't lose that one, Adam, quite frankly.
No, I cannot.
Right, well, the Vuelta is not the only action on offer here at Eurosport GCN. Tomorrow, the Ceratizit Challenge by La Vuelta kicks off for the team time trial from 5:20, while stage 4 of the Tour of Britain is available from 1 in the afternoon. But in the meantime, you can catch up with the first 3 stages. If you missed any of those, we'll be back with you tomorrow at 1:30. And it will be a chance for the breakaway tomorrow, one of few left of this season. This particular breakaway will certainly be here, whatever the outcome. We'll see you tomorrow.
At the end today, it's going to feel like a mountain that they are dealing with because it's quite a ramp towards the end. And in fact, all hell is going to be breaking loose that are going to scare the pants off the fast men.
Oh, that was close.
It is very, very compact down there. It's going to be nasty. The safest place to be is out front. Primoz Roglic will fancy this. You can be absolutely certain he doesn't mind a skirmish, and here he comes. Oh, it's popped absolutely everybody. This is fantastic. It's a sprint finish. Here we go. Doesn't quite open up just yet. Oh, and down goes Roglic at the very last touch of wheels. Pedersen takes it ahead of Ackermann, then comes Daniel Van Poppel, and then comes Fred Wright. Battered, bruised, brave. Oh.